Y'all like this epic music, chat? So, Alex, I want to make sure I get this right. Mukala has made an awesome funky remix of our intro music. So welcome everyone. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Huge shout out to Alex. Oh, got my hair is all squiggly. Yeah, Alex is fantastic. Music was really good, wasn't it? So welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I am a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is just for educational and entertainment purposes only. So if y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional and get yourself evaluated, get yourself some help. Yeah, music was great. How are y'all doing today? We doing, oh, let me just make sure that, yeah. What's the name of the song? It's Alex Mukala Funky Remix version 5. That's the name of the song. I'm not, I don't know what else to call it. Yeah. So how's everybody doing today? Is that remix on Spotify? I don't know. Let's ask Alex if it's on Spotify. Hope y'all are doing well, by the way. Hope everybody's doing okay. Version 6.1. He's such a great gaming music content creator. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So check out Alex's stuff. Do we have like a link or something to his channels? Do we have that? Let's see. All right, so here's, y'all can follow him on Twitter. Oh crap, I need to sign in. Yeah, dude. So it's at Alex. Let me just make sure I get this right. At Alex_Moukala, Moukala. And yeah, so Alex is fantastic. I see that he's got a pinned tweet that's 15 Elden Ring's main themes and 15 styles. Let me actually just show you all this real quick. So let's take a quick look at this. This is cool. Right, so this is Alex. Thank you very much, Alex, for making us the music. We really appreciate it. And this looks hype, right? So definitely check this out. I'm going to be listening to this later because, you know, Elden Ring is dope. And thank you very much, my friend. Awesome artist. Yeah. Okay, so he is on Spotify. So definitely check him out on Spotify too. So yeah, he makes... have I finished Elden Ring? I did finish Elden Ring. Well, so hold on a second. When you say finish Elden Ring, did I beat the game and see an ending? Yes. Have I beaten Millennia? Not yet. And I don't know that I ever will. The challenge with all the From Software games, especially the DLCs, is that the DLCs are basically just really, really, really hard bosses that you have to grind. And what I love about the FromSoft games is not necessarily the bosses. Like sometimes they can be fun and exciting and stuff like that. It's actually like the exploration and that stuff. The stories are actually fantastic too. No, man, I'm playing offline. Yeah, I'm not really... What were you playing as? So I was sort of like... So I started off by leveling strength and dex just because I wanted to try out a bunch of different weapons. And then I've always wanted to play a mage build in any of the From Software games, but I just haven't been able to because I liked sword and board and quality builds so much in Dark Souls 1 through 3. It's just too much fun. So I tried like, I got some decent strength and dex, and then I started like pumping up int with the goal of using magic. And so that sort of naturally, then I discovered this weapon called the Moonveil Katana. And I never really got into using weapon arts, but sort of discovered that the Moonveil Katana is kind of OP. And so I ended up respecking to like an int Moonveil build, and basically like a combination of katana, transient moonlight, and rock sling will get you through the game pretty easily. I tried dual colossal weapons. So I liked bonk builds too. So in some of the other games, like I would go bonk build, but bonking seemed really lackluster. So really liked like brick hammer and battle hammer. Like I like these fast, heavy hitting, strength weapons, but like the bonk stuff just seemed, I don't know, lackluster. Yeah, so I also tried using those gigantic hammers. Once again, it was like kind of okay. Like I know that there are all these jump attack builds, but jump attacking gets kind of boring after a little while, which I suppose you could say about Moonveil as well, but yeah, so I want to try, if I play again, I'm going to do, I want to do a second playthrough with a faith build. I don't have a favorite grinding spot. I don't grind, generally speaking. But anyway. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we've got a couple of cool stuff to go through today, and maybe we can get a poll for what order we're going to go in. So what I wanted to talk to you all about today is there's actually a lot of posts about like what's going on in the world and how to manage it. And so, hold on a second. It seems like we have people exiting. Okay. So we've got a couple of things to go through today, and maybe we can get a poll from the mods. So the internet is making me secure. So this is sort of talking a little bit about alphas, betas, hustle cultures, how the internet basically tells you that you're doing a bad job and how to understand that and how to deal with that. Once again, like, is anyone else experiencing severe anxiety because of the state of the world right now? Because like the world does seem to be going in the wrong direction really, really fast. You know, whether you're thinking about climate change and like literally the world ending, or global pandemics, or like fires and floods, which like hurricanes are getting worse, like, you know, heat waves and things like that. Like, it just seems like everything is going to hell. And so how do we deal with that? How do we understand that? What do we potentially do about it? And I liked this post as well because it's sort of like, you know, this is a post about technology and social media as like a safety net or coping mechanism. So oftentimes when we talk about social media or technology, we'll talk about it in a very sort of negative way, right? So we'll say like, we'll talk about people who are addicted or people who develop some kind of body image issue related to like social media usage or things like that. But what if you're like, generally speaking, doing okay? Right? Like, what's a healthy level of technology usage? Is it okay to use it at times? Like, generally speaking, so this is a person who, you know, recently started CBT and has a good network, and then he goes to the gym and socializes, able to do normal things. So if you're someone who's like not necessarily struggling, but you're just trying to figure out, okay, like what's a healthy amount of technology usage and how do I know if it's healthy or unhealthy, then you can kind of go into it. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about, or you know, the last option is grinding hard. So for those of you that watch stuff to help you figure out your life, but you're not actually doing anything about it, like what's up with that? Oh, okay, it looks like we only have 3 options. Okay. Cognitive behavioral therapy, chat. Come on. Play nice. So what do y'all want to do? Closed beta test. Okay. So we'll talk about, so Brunix is asking just 5 more years of watching Dr. K will do it. We'll talk about that, right? What does it? Okay. Anxiety because world. So we'll start with that. Okay. Let me get organized, chat. One moment. Okay. All righty. So let's talk about this for a second, okay? Let's take a look. Is anyone else experiencing anxiety because the state of the world right now? I've been getting these really anxious and bad feelings for seemingly no reason these past few weeks. My chest is so tight and I can't seem to breathe. My colleague also had a panic attack last week on the same day that I had mine. I feel like the current Ukraine conflict mixed with the Roe v. Wade bill being overturned and the fact that it feels like all the progress humanity has made is being backpedaled in terms of human rights and fascism being on the rise, I genuinely feel like everything is hopeless emotionally. Logically, I know we can overcome any hardship and that I'm lucky I'm not in the Ukraine or even the US for that matter. But this feeling of absolute dread just won't go away, and I don't know how to get rid of it no matter how much breath work or meditation that I do. So this is an increasingly common experience that we're having. So the world appears to be changing, right? So like we like if you kind of look at the book of Revelation in the Bible, they talk about like all these signs that the world is ending. And I'm sure that this is in other religious traditions as well, but like we're checking a lot of those boxes. You know, there's like plagues and fires and floods and war. And if I remember correctly, the Antichrist is someone who pretends to be religious, and everyone's going to think that they're the good person, but they're actually the Antichrist. So it's like sort of like a false prophet. Don't quote me on that. It's been a long time since I studied the book of Revelation. So it sometimes seems like, you know, the world like is straight up ending, and like things seem to be moving in a bad direction. For every step forward we take one step back, right? There's war over here. The economy is screwed. Inflation is an all-time high. 52% of people who are between the ages of 18 and 29 now live with their parents, and the number seems to be going up every year. Rent is hard to pay. You're like 30 years old, and like at this point, you were supposed to no longer have roommates, right? Like, and so everywhere you look, it seems like something is really bad, and things seem to be getting worse. And then some of us are really awesome about it, because what we're actually doing is like we've been told, okay, like breath work, meditate your problems away, right? And there's definitely a role for meditation, but no matter how much meditation you do, it doesn't seem to be sufficient. So if you're someone who's looking at the world, and it's not just that the world is going to hell, it's that you are affected by this. Like, even if there are things happening in different countries or on different continents, you are experiencing a panic attack. And so how the hell do you deal with this? Like, it's one thing to have a panic attack because your specific life is falling apart. It's another thing to have a panic attack because of crap that's happening half a world away. And I'm meditating. So it's like, what do you, like, how do I, what do you even do about this kind of situation? It's like, how can you stop the world affecting you in such a profound way? Now, there are going to be a lot of like simple things that we're going to talk about. So people may say, just spend less time on the internet. I don't know if you'll know this, but spending less time on the internet is really hard. And it's getting harder every single year that goes by, right? And why is that? Why is spending less time on the internet becoming harder? Well, let's think about that. The first thing is that the internet is like literally infecting more and more things in your house. So like I recently saw at someone's house a smart fridge. So now not only can you hear about the war in Ukraine on your phone and on the computer and on your tablet and on the TV, but now every time you go get a midnight snack, there's some bulletin about the war in Ukraine on your fridge. Now it's even on the watches that we wear. Oh my God, I have a smartwatch. So now I can hear about the war of Ukraine here. I can hear about climate change right here. I can hear about Roe v. Wade being overturned. And, you know, soon, if we don't have it already, we're going to have smart showers, right? And so we're going to have smart toilets. And everywhere we go, it's going to be like there's going to be more access to the internet, more access to the internet. Next thing that's going on is that the internet is getting like more engaging and addictive, because people are figuring out, okay, if I increase the volume of ads, people will pay attention more. So like the internet is like invading our lives. So we're letting it in half the time, and the rest of the time it's like invading our lives. And so this is where it's kind of interesting, because we have to sort of acknowledge that and at the same time recognize what the impact of the internet on our mind is. So let's just understand this kind of from a physiologic sense, okay, to begin with. So we have this system in our body called, we'll call it the stress system, right? So it's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenocortical axis. So this is where we have this part of our brain called the hypothalamus. Then the hypothalamus sends signals to this part of our brain called the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland secretes a bunch of hormones. And it secretes a hormone called ACTH. And ACTH travels to our adrenal glands and activates our stress system. The stress system was designed to be a short-term system. So it's like most of the days I'm like out, you know, looking for like roots and berries. And then occasionally I'll do a little bit of hunting if I see an animal trail. And then sometimes I'll run across something like a cougar if I'm in the US, for example. So like a mountain lion, okay? And if I see that kind of thing, my stress system activates, but generally speaking, the stress system gets activated for brief periods of time and has a sustained effect. So what we tend to see is that the stress system, okay, so let's like understand this. The stress system activates short term. So in the first 5 minutes, we get adrenaline. I mean, adrenaline takes seconds to release. And then sort of like, 20 minutes plus, we get cortisol. And then cortisol kind of like activates for about 24 hours. Okay? So generally speaking, the stress system activates and lasts for about 24 hours. And the goal of the stress system is to keep us alive for 24 hours. So what we're going to do is short-term survival is greater than like long-term health. It's like an all hands on deck kind of situation. So one thing, for example, that the stress system does when cortisol activates is it causes muscle breakdown, for energy, for immediate energy. So let's just think about that for a second. So like if I have a muscle that is a certain size, I'm gonna actually break down 10% of that muscle tissue so that the rest of my muscles have sufficient glucose and energy to be able to run for an hour if they need to. So this stress system was sort of designed to be activated for brief periods of time and then like sort of get deactivated. Now what happens with technology is that our stress system is being constantly activated. So technology, so what does the internet do? Okay, there's the war in Ukraine. And for days and days, all we hear about is the war in Ukraine, war in Ukraine, war in Ukraine. And then what happens is someone on a news desk, somewhere realizes, okay, the war in Ukraine is no longer emotionally engaging. What does emotionally engaging mean? It means activates the stress system. Those two go hand in hand. So let's come up with a new thing to get everyone engaged in watching more. So they come up with something else. And so Roe v. Wade was overturned recently, so everyone's talking about that. Everyone is stressed about that. Everyone's going to be stressed about this for a couple of days, and then something else will come along that will be emotionally engaging. So not only is technology infecting all dimensions of your life, but all of the news sources and outlets and social media websites and things like that are all competing for your attention. And they'll do whatever they can to get you to click on their stuff. So what this sort of means is that our stress system is being activated on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, on Friday, etc. And so if you have something like a panic attack, what's going on there? Well, the first thing is if you have a panic attack, you have to be a little bit careful at assuming that it's just because of everything that's going on in the world. You should definitely get a clinical evaluation. But when we're in this high stress state, one thing that we know about a panic attack is that panic attacks are not, generally speaking, mental. So a panic attack is a physiologic response. And one of the hallmarks of panic disorder is that oftentimes they don't even have a trigger. So if you really look at the diagnosis of panic disorder, which is a DSM-5 diagnosis, which clinicians will use, one of the key things about it that oftentimes really confuses people is we'll see posts like this where someone is like, I have a panic attack because of what's going on in the world. And you've got someone else who's got panic disorder who like is walking their dog and is not stressed about anything, and boom, they have a panic attack. So it's a physiologic thing. And so as we activate our stress physiology because of our technology exposure, we sort of move ourselves in the direction of something like a panic attack. So what do you do about it? So I'm going to start with the concept of diet. So here are 3 things that you can do. If you find that the world is despairing, or the world is like going to hell, and it's affecting you personally and you don't know what to do about it, okay? And so the other thing that I just want to mention for a second is that, so there's a great quote by Krishnamurti. I may get it a little bit wrong, but he basically said being well adjusted to a sick society does not make you healthy. And I think that quote is so relevant today. So what's happening is we're having to adapt to a society that is getting worse. And as we adapt to a society that's getting worse, we don't end up actually as healthy. We adapt to our circumstances, but we suffer because of it. So here are a couple of things to really think about in terms of how to address this. The first is we're going to talk a little bit about diet, okay? So if I eat like Cheetos and pizza and drink beer or soda all day long, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, what is going to happen to my body? Right? So depending on what I put in, I'm going to see changes, right? So I'll basically like pollute my body. So what you'll see is all kinds of problems. Like you'll see, decreased energy, kind of sluggishness. I remember this very well in my days of ordering Chinese takeout, just huge amounts of Chinese takeout so I could reduce the cost of the delivery fee and then sort of have all this food piled up so that I didn't have to leave my room. And I felt low energy, sluggish, felt bad, leaned on unhealthy coping mechanisms. Also started to feel angry at like all kinds of things outside of my control, right? So this is what happens when you sort of pollute your body, is your body starts to like, not necessarily malfunction, like it will eventually over time if you do it over and over and over again, right? You can cause damage to your body. But depending on the diet that you put in, you're going to get a particular kind of impact. So what is our information diet? What do we consume in terms of information? So like these things are happening, right? It's not a question that these things are happening. It's not a question. Hi. Yes.
Mommy said I have to go to timeout.
Okay, well, this is not where timeout is. This is Daddy's office. So I think you should go to timeout. But, yeah.
Mommy's not letting me go out of timeout.
Okay, well, let's go find Mommy. Okay. Okay. Hey, Kruti? Can you go to Mommy's office? Yep. You need to go to Mommy's office, sweetie. Go time out in there, okay? Okay. Where were we? All right. So what is the information diet that you're consuming? So like as we put certain things in our mind will start to react emotionally. As it reacts emotionally, we will start to activate our stress system. As we activate our stress system, we will move in the direction of something like a panic attack. Okay? So this is where I want to share with y'all something. So this is like, so you need to basically control this system in a couple of different ways. So one is information leads to activation of the stress system, which then results in increased energy, right? Because you get ramped up. Does that, oh, okay, hold on. Let me just move this up. Okay, this is going to result in increased energy, And when our mind has a bunch of energy, we result in increased anxiety. So if you think about anxiety, and this is all like, if y'all have watched Dr. K's guide, this will be old news to you. So if we think about anxiety, anxiety is too much energy in the mind. Does that make sense? It's like your thoughts are moving really, really fast. So fast thoughts, circular thoughts, right? It's like if you've got too much stuff in there and it can't get out. Now, there's another kind of problem, which is that as we look at the world like this, what starts to happen is we get, these are problems that feel unsolvable. So the other challenge that we run into is when our mind comes up with a problem, why do we have a brain that can understand problems? To fix them. So if we think about like, even if you look at a primate, right? So like, let's say I'm a chimp. Chimps understand problems. They're like, oh, I'm hungry, or it's raining, or I'm thirsty. And then they're able to like affect change to fix the problem. That's the whole reason that we have feelings like hunger and thirst. So the reason that we have anxiety is to like try to figure out, okay, what are we anxious about so that we can fix it? Now, the problem is that our brain evolved in a situation where there were not global problems. So I even remember talking to my grandmother who grew up in a village of like 300 people in India. And the outside world was like a myth to her. No one ever left. Like no one had ever left on a country or been on an airplane. I remember one of the early, not the first time I went, but I had this very vivid memory of some kid asking me in the village. He was like, you came here on an airplane? And he was fascinated. And I was like, yeah, I came here on an airplane. It's the only way to get here. And he was like, an airplane goes really fast, right? And I was like, yeah, it goes very fast. He's like, how, like, goes like hundreds of miles an hour or whatever. And he's like, how do you not fall out? I was like, what? He's like, how do you not fall out of the plane if it's going? Because this person grew up in a village where the mode of transportation is a cart. And the idea of an enclosed like thing that you don't fall out of, like he thought that airplanes were just open on the top and you just kind of sit down like a cart. It's a great question. But this is the kind of world that our brain evolved in. It didn't evolve for a world with global problems, which, by the way, are unsolvable, right? So if you're in the US and you're kind of thinking like, okay, Roe v. Wade got overturned, like what can I do about it? And then you kind of look at the world and you look at like how everything is like, popular vote stuff and gerrymandering and the political situation in the US is like all going to hell. And so what can you do about it? Nothing. And so then what that sort of does is, generally speaking, the purpose of anxiety is to take action to correct the problem. But this isn't an option. So what we end up doing is just like bouncing back like into more energy and more anxiety. And then as we can keep on consuming stuff from the internet, this kind of goes in. And the good thing here is that you can meditate here, right? So that's where meditation kind of comes in. So how do we fix this problem? The first thing to understand is that this whole cycle starts with this. So what you need to do is go on an information diet. Now, this is really tricky because the business model of the people who stress you out is to stress you out. It's emotionally engaging stuff that causes people to click on things, right? So we even recently had a interesting post where someone was like, I don't like y'all's YouTube titles because they're clickbait. And it's like, yeah, we play that game too, right? So someone once told me several very successful YouTubers, I asked them, help me understand like how I can help people through YouTube. And what one of them told me, brilliant, said, you have to trick people into learning. You can't tell them. No one watches videos about, people do watch videos, but like, you have to trick people into learning. That's how if you want to help people on YouTube, you can't tell them you're going to try to help them. You have to trick them into it. Anyway, so it was an interesting piece of information. So this is where like literally the amount of time that you spend in this kind of toxic information environment is going to affect your mindset. So we can also look at this as in someone who, is in a toxic household. So if you're in a toxic household and you have like a parent who's like constantly emotionally abusive, The less time you spend in that household, the better you will feel about yourself. And what we're essentially doing is letting the toxicity in through all of our devices. And so you result in something weird, right? And this person even understands this. Logically, I know we can overcome anything. I'm not even in the Ukraine or the US. This stuff doesn't even affect me. But I have this feeling of absolute dread, right? So we have these empathic parts of our brain which we relate to the suffering of others. And even though we're not directly affected by them, as long as we're hearing about this stuff, we're going to be affected by it. So this is something that I think is underappreciated in terms of like motivation. And we actually dig into this. I want to just show you all this. So this is the new guide that we have coming out. So for those of y'all that have seen this before, these are the old guides, green, blue, and orange. So this is the motivation guide. And one of the things that we really emphasize in terms of controlling the mind and understanding how to like have a healthy mind, let me try to find it. Not this. Wait, where? Oh, here we go. It's over here. So, is an understanding of the indriyas or the sense organs. So this is where your motivation is going to be heavily, heavily, heavily affected by your sense organs. Your state of mind is going to be heavily, heavily, heavily affected by your sense organs. So in the same way that, like, if you think about, going to therapy, what happens in therapy? You have a different kind of sensory input. If you think about getting away from an abusive relationship, right? If you're dating an abusive dude and you get out of that relationship, you're changing your sensory input. Being in a healthy relationship creates a different kind of sensory input. So a lot of the state of our mind, like, I don't know how else to say this, but if someone if someone you care about tells you, hey, you're a terrible person, what is that? That's actually technically sensory input. That's what it is. It's the impact internally of the sensory input, but literally what it is a sensory signal. And so by cultivating the right kind of sensory input, we can actually alter the shape of our mind. So very practically, what does this mean? It's kind of simple, but, limiting contact to the internet. So there's simple things that you can do. So like, let's look at a couple of, and by the way, on the guide, we also sort of talk some about this, right? So we're going to go, there's videos about technology habits and how to develop healthy technology habits. We're going to give y'all some of that information right here and now, okay? So limiting contact of the internet. So the first kind of question is, first thing that you can do is don't take your phone with you in the house. So what we'll oftentimes find is I'll sit down on the couch and I'll scroll through my phone, and then I'll walk to the kitchen, I'll scroll through my phone. I'll use the toilet and I'll scroll through my phone. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll scroll through my phone. I'll get into bed at night and I'll scroll through my phone. So the purpose of the portability of the phone is it's fine if you take it outside, right? That's great so that you have a way to call people or communicate or whatever, but don't carry it with you throughout the house. One really, really simple tip. Okay? So it's fine to, like, if you want to read a news article and you sit down at your desktop or your laptop or whatever, and you're like, okay, like, now I'm going to look at the news, or now I'm going to browse Reddit. So in order to control it, don't take your devices with you. So you have to actively stop the invasion of the internet into your life. Second thing is, like, designate time for internet usage. Because what's happening is it's all over the place, right? And it infects every part. Like, so it's, I'm going to browse Reddit for an hour. That's okay. Like, I'm just going to designate it. So don't let the internet invade the empty spaces of your life. It's fine because we have to use the internet, right? Like, there's no way to get around it. But be very careful about letting it fill in all of the emptiness. And as the internet fills in the empty spaces of your life, this stress reaction will increase. Okay? So in the same way that we have to control our physical diet, we need to absolutely control our information diet. Second thing that we need to do is focus on the stress system. Now, this person already meditates, so that's fantastic. So there are some, meditation techniques. So one good example of this is Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam, or alternate nostril breathing, which we've been teaching for a while. It's really interesting because this has a new name in scientific circles. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or two you hear everything about this thing called cardiac coherence breathing. It's alternate nostril breathing. So alternate nostril breathing is a great example. The cool thing about it is, since we've sort of come up with a new name and medical science has culturally appropriated Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam, what we're actually seeing is a lot of studies on it and the autonomic benefits of cardiac coherence breathing. So autonomic is the system that we're talking about. It's the stress system. So we want techniques specifically that affect or are targeted towards our autonomic nervous system. So this is where what we really want is pranayam. If you're talking about not just mindfulness, and qigong are probably your two best bets for meditative techniques, of which alternate nostril breathing is one. Basically, we want techniques that focus on the length, increasing the length of exhalation. And this is the common physiologic element for reductions in hyperactivation of the autonomic nervous system. So basically de-stresses you. Okay? So you do want to meditate. The problem is that you can only meditate so much. And if your inputs are still super high, like, it's not going to be enough. The third thing that we want to do is get this energy out. Because as long as the energy is bouncing around in our mind, it needs to be vented in some way. So you can absolutely do something like see a therapist, right? So that's one way of getting out anxiety and things like that. Especially if you're having a panic attack, you probably want a clinical evaluation. But this is going to be kind of subtle. But what I want you to do is take insufficient action. Really important. So remember that part of our anxiety system in the brain is I have anxiety, and the purpose of anxiety is to prompt action. The prompting the action reduces the energy. This is a high energy state, right? And so we sort of know that it reduces the energy. And so what it does is it no longer loops out. Now, we also sort of understand this in a couple of other ways, because we know that something like exercise improves anxiety, gets some of that energy out. But when you exercise, you're not fixing the problem. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm anxious about some problem in the world like climate change, and my anxiety is really bad and I'm on medication, I'm doing CBT and all this other good stuff, exercise doesn't alter climate change at all. What it does is decreases my energy. This is an approximation, right? So I'm using the term energy here as an analog for all kinds of different physiologic effects. And what we know is that exercise will clinically reduce anxiety. So what about this word insufficient? So the problem is that if I'm anxious about, let's say, climate change, what makes it hard for me to take action? It's not going to be enough. What's the point? So here we are when we're anxious. And what is the thought in our head? What's the point? It won't be enough. And it's this thought, this amount of thought of insufficiency. If you want to look at politics, everyone in the US especially has been complaining recently that our politicians are really, really old, right? They're out of touch with the young generation. Young generation doesn't vote. You ask a young person, why don't you vote? It won't be enough. It won't do any good. So what do you expect? So if you're anxious and you don't take action, that anxiety will continue to persist. Right? So someone in chat is saying, I'm 22, haven't voted once since I was 18, I don't care to. right? That's your choice. My point is that anytime we look at a problem, and if we want to take an action that would somehow help, almost from this angle, what keeps us from taking this action is this thought. It won't be enough. So if let's say, if I want to get in shape and I feel physically unhealthy, right? And then like if I look at, let's say, taking a walk, why don't I do it? Because my mind says to me, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Therefore, you don't do it. So the action doesn't get taken. So what I want you to focus on is insufficient action. If you want to transform your life, the most important thing you can do is start taking insufficient actions. Okay? Take insufficient actions. So if you're worried about the climate, go and like plant a tree. Like you can plant a tree. It's not hard to do. You can grow a seed, put a seed in a little thing and then go put it somewhere. Right? You can pick up trash in a public place, clean up the environment a little bit, and then you'll say to yourself, oh, but that's not enough. That's not enough. That's not enough. But once you start taking insufficient actions, you'll be amazed at what it does for you. It works on this energy principle here, right? Because now we're like sort of venting our mind. We're physically active. We're getting out of the house. There's all kinds of things that taking insufficient action will recruit. And then this is also where like over time, you'll start to learn a couple of almost spiritual perspectives about like, even if the world is going to hell, I did my part. Right? You can start to cultivate detachment. I can't fix climate change, but I did my part. And this is the cool thing about the internet. This is what we discovered here at Healthy Gamer through AOE, this concept of AOE healing, is that no snowflake thinks it's responsible for the avalanche. Because it's true. Right? So take some kind of action, whatever it is. Like, it's not important what you take, but just be careful about this insufficient part. It's okay to start with insufficient actions. And if you do these three things, if you control what is entering your mind through the control of sensory input, and in the guide, for example, we'll teach you specific meditation techniques to help you filter what comes into your mind. If you decompress your stress through particular meditation techniques like alternate nostril breathing, and if you vent your high level of energy, you'll sort of work on all three of these dimensions. And hopefully, it'll help you manage a world that appears to be going to hell. Questions? Someone's asking, does your anxiety help with social anxiety? I don't really get out much. So the anxiety guide is organized in basically two ways. We talk about some clinical stuff in which there's a particular section on or video on social anxiety. But the bigger part of the anxiety guide is that it teaches you the nature of anxiety in your mind in a non-clinical way. So we go over things like generalized anxiety disorder, treatment perspectives, and stuff like that, diagnosis of clinical stuff. But the whole point is that we teach all stuff like, I mean, I have the video right here. I mean, I have the thing, so I can just show you. So we'll also talk about things like, you know, evidence-based herbs for anxiety and things like that. But I think the main thing that I like about it is that it teaches you, like, you know, basics of anxiety 101, things like the effect of physiology on anxiety. So this isn't specific to social anxiety, but it absolutely applies to social anxiety. We'll also teach you things like how we respond to anxiety in ways that make it worse. And so, like, how we sort of like propagate anxiety by trying to control it. And we'll actually talk about that. We're going to cover that today in a post. So we don't, and before I forget, I mean, there is a segment on social anxiety disorder. But most of it is like the basics of like how anxiety works in your mind. Okay? Other questions? So, R Terrible is asking, any advice for how to disconnect consciously for content creators whose job description is to be chronically online? 100%. So we have a content creator program where we have a coaching program for people who are content creators. And working with hundreds of content creators now, we've learned how hard it is to separate, because it's your job to be online, right? So that's where there's like all kinds of like important tips if you are a content creator or being online is a part of your job. So one thing is you have to be careful about what's logged in where. So there's even in simple tips, like, you know, when I log into my computer every day, I use basically the same login for if I'm playing Dota or if I'm streaming or if I'm reviewing like data from a research study. So I use the same login. But the truth of the matter is that you can actually create different logins where like Twitter is not logged in, right? Or like Steam is not visible or hard to access, right? So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do to like literally create dividing lines between work and like not work. That's also where there are like other tips that we'll have, which is that like, so for example, don't log into Twitter on your phone. So if really the purpose of Twitter is work related, then it should be logged in on your desktop and you manage your Twitter as part of your job. But then you're like, but if I'm not logged into Twitter on my phone, then ... Yeah, absolutely. So there will be a price to pay if you are not logged into Twitter on your phone. The question is the benefit worth the price that you have to pay? So sometimes that also means creating separate Twitter accounts, right? So separate your personal Twitter account from your work Twitter account. And I think it's like there's a lot of like limit setting, which becomes increasingly more difficult if you're a content creator. And there are all kinds of other problems as well, like that content creators suffer from because they don't have good boundaries in their life by virtue of their job. So another really classic example, I know this isn't what you asked, but it's something that we see time and time again and something that we've sort of learned, which is not stuff that they teach you in medical school, by the way, which is like collaborations versus friendships. So this is so hard for content creators because when someone is like, hey, do you want to hang out sometime? Is this a collab? Is this person talking to me because I have more followers than they are, or are they my friend? So like this like the tension between personal relationships and collaborations, because a lot of the collaboration success depends on the quality of the personal relationship. It's like they don't get to have friends that are separate from work, which is not exclusively a problem for content creators, right? It's just exacerbated or amplified. But there are a lot of people whose social circle and professional circle overlap. So there are all kinds of challenges that content creators face, which I think are actually relatively novel. So there's some stuff that we sort of know if you look at like celebrity psychology, but content creation is completely different because there's also all this stuff around metrics. So another challenge that content creators face is how do you know when enough is enough? When are you done editing a YouTube video? When have you come up with the right thumbnail? Should I spend an hour coming up with a thumbnail, 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours? What's the right title for a YouTube video? Should I spend an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours? Right? So the nice thing about many jobs is that there's like a start and a finish. Like even as a clinician, like I'm a psychiatrist, I have appointments. I have appointments scheduled from 9 to 5 p.m. And at 5 p.m. I finish my last appointment and I'm done. I'm done for the day. But as a content creator, even if you're doing something like, you know, making music, right? Like when is the song perfect? Can I work on it more? Can it be better? It's so challenging. So many challenges that a lot of content creators have. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with all these people. And thankfully, we've been able to help them substantially. But it's really interesting how the mental health challenges that people face are evolving as our world evolves. Okay. Great question. How do we deal with the guilt of not being in touch with the news? Great question. So what's wrong with not being in touch with the news? Why is that a bad thing? Right? So where does this idea that it is your responsibility to read the news or, follow the news, what difference does it make? So I remember having a conversation with a family member of mine where they were like, you should read the paper every day. And I was like, why? And they're like, so that way you know what's going on in the world. You can't be a clueless noob. And it's like, what difference does it make if I know what's going on in the world or I don't know what's going on in the world? Like, what difference does it make if there are times where it makes a difference, right? So if for example, like you're trying to figure out who to vote for, then you may want to understand what's going on in terms of like foreign policy and like whatnot. I'm not saying that collecting information is a bad thing. This is where basically there was something else that I'll tell y'all, which is that if something is so important and so huge, you'll hear about it even if you never watch the news or like consume the news in any way, shape, or form. So the tricky thing is that that's a logical perspective. The question is, why do you feel guilty? That's what's important to understand. Where does that guilt coming from? Or am I being and then like really like look at that critically. Is it appropriate to feel guilty? Where is this idea that I'm feeling? Because if you feel guilty, you feel that way for a reason. It's a valid feeling. It may not be correct, but it's valid. You feel guilty because you were taught to feel guilty, because somewhere along the way, a value system was injected into you. And you're not living up to that value system, therefore you feel guilt. So it's not inappropriate that you feel guilty because that's what you were taught. It doesn't make it correct, though. And this is the subtlety between a feeling that's valid and a feeling that's appropriate. Right? So like when someone gets me a gift, for example, for my birthday, and the value of the gift is $100. And if I grew up in a household where the value of gifts, the price tag on the gift, correlates with the love that you feel. And so I look at this $100 gift and I think to myself, this person got my sibling a $200 gift. Screw this. I'm mad at this person for giving me such a crappy gift. That feeling may be valid based on your internal construction. That's what you were taught. Money means caring. Money means love. And it's not entirely appropriate. And what we really have to do is be a little bit critical and exploratory with our value system when we feel a particular way. And that's how you free yourself of the guilt. It's not giving into the behavior. It's understanding why you feel that way and then deciding for yourself whether you are okay feeling that way in that situation. So 2 Moose 529 said, what if they feel guilty because they think they are ignorant of a problem? They can't be a part of the solution. Yeah, we covered that. Oh, sorry. Can't be part of the solution, then take insufficient action. Beautiful question, because it's exactly what happens, right? Our mind comes up with some kind of like justification for why we can't do something. I don't know how to fix climate change. What am I supposed to do? I can't be a part of the solution. You can do a little bit. Right? Okay, let's move on. Next up. All right, this is a good one. Okay. Let's take a look. Okay. Me watching Healthy Gamer GG, knowing damn well I'm not doing anything to improve my life. So sometimes there is content on the internet designed to help you improve your life. And do you know who makes content designed to help you improve your life? We do. And you watch the content, and you even see other people who will post on things like subreddit with wins, and other people will say, I'm making progress. We had a great, post the other day where people were like, does anyone actually who works on themselves, does anyone actually found a partner? And people were like, yes, we have. So there are people out there so you're watching the content that's designed to help your life. And there are people out there that are actually doing stuff about it. But all you're doing is just watching and you're not doing anything about it. And so then you're kind of like, now what? It's one thing to start watching the right content. It's another thing to actually change your life. So this is kind of interesting because you may think that my response to this is going to be, okay, cool, awesome. Dr. K is now going to teach me how to not just watch things and do stuff instead, right? Because that's what I need. What I really need is to learn how to do stuff instead of just watching stuff. Not going to do that. Nope. What I'm going to teach you today is even better than that. It's how to change your life without doing anything. Without doing a damn thing. How to just watch and do nothing and still improve your life. Now, you may think to yourself, this is insane. But we're going to explain this to y'all. And what this comes down to is the science of learning and the science of change. So let's take a big step back. Okay, big step back. How do people change? If you want to change, let's start by understanding how people change. And is doing stuff how people change? Hold on a second. Let's think about that, right? So doing stuff is not how people change. It's what it looks like after you change. Do y'all get that? The doing stuff comes after the change, not before the change. So this is really great because if you're just a watcher, you can actually change and then you can start doing stuff. But all you have to do is watch. And so let's understand this a little bit, okay? It's cool because we actually have really great science on this. So let's first start by understanding what do we mean by the word change? What does it mean to change? So what I'm going to do is make sort of a leap, which I think is a fair leap to make. I'm going to substitute the word change with the word learn. So if we look at fundamentally in our brain, what parts of our brain govern changing? It's the same parts of our brain that govern learning, right? So I'll give you a simple example. Let's say that I burn my hand on a hot stove. Next time around, do I burn my hand again? No, I've changed my behavior. What circuits in the brain govern that kind of change? The learning circuits of the brain, right? So we'll sort of and we're going to take a step back also and look at another sort of dimension, which is this concept of the stages of change model, which we use in addiction treatment. So what tends to happen is if someone's struggling with an addiction, they'll try to go sober, right? So they make an attempt at a change and it doesn't work. They relapse. Then they try again and it doesn't work. Try again, doesn't work. And then one day, if you talk to them, this is actually what they'll say. I woke up on Monday morning and I was like, enough is enough. I'm done with this forever. No more. And then they get rid of all their alcohol and they never have another drink again. There's a little bit more to it than that. But if you actually talk to people who've become sober, this is the way that they will describe their sobriety. Not everyone, but it absolutely happens. Right? So if you even think about your own life, that's something that you started doing that you didn't used to do before. So maybe it's like drinking water instead of soda. Maybe it's like waking up on time. Maybe it's doing yoga. Maybe it's like installing a meditation app. Maybe it's like setting a boundary with your friends. Maybe it's like uninstalling a particular video game. Like each and every one of us has made some kind of change in our lives. And if you really think about it, how did that happen? And chances are you were just sort of like, one day I kind of woke up and was like, okay, I'm done with this. And then you change. But what the hell? Like, how does that work? And so this is where it's kind of interesting. But there's a lot of like subconscious processing that needs to go on. And that's essentially the process of learning. So you relapse once and you don't learn your lesson. You relapse again, you don't learn your lesson. You relapse a third time, you don't learn your lesson. The fourth time around, you relapse and you learn your lesson, and then your behavior changes. Even in our vocabulary, we have, I didn't learn my lesson. What does that mean? That means I didn't change. Those two statements are synonymous. Do y'all get that? He never learns his lesson. She never learns her lesson. They never learn their lesson. So changing and learning are 100% synonymous, okay? So there are a couple things we're going to talk about changing first, then we're going to talk about learning. So in the stages of change, what we sort of realize is that in order to enact behavioral change, to actually change your behavior, there are a set of cognitive stages that you have to go through. This is almost like the Kubler-Ross, stages of grief, like denial and anger and bargaining. So we have a cognitive process that we kind of go through. So the first stage is pre-contemplative. Pre-contemplative means I'm not even thinking about it. I am not aware that there is a problem. Okay? So this is like, I never realized that drinking alcohol was bad or playing video games are bad or whatever. I'm going to use addiction sort of as a backdrop for this, okay, context. But stages of change applies to everything from eating healthy to exercising, any kind of change that you want to make. So we don't even know it's a problem. So what's the solution? How do you work on someone who disagrees or is not aware that there's a problem? Do you give them a plan? Do you give them an advice? Do you say, here's 5 things you can do to improve your life? And then do they do those things? No. Because they don't have the motivation, because they're not actually they don't even think it's a problem. So sort of in denial. Or it's really lack of awareness, but it can sometimes be denial. So what is the solution for someone who is pre-contemplative? Not really even sure what the problem is. It's to challenge their assumptions. How do you challenge their assumptions? Through questions and information. So that's part of what we do. Right? So we'll sort of say, even at the beginning of this video, we were like, oh, great, Dr. K is going to teach me how to change. No, we're not going to teach you how to change. We're going to challenge your assumptions of how change happens. We're not going to get you to act at all. We're just going to explain something else. We're going to give you information. The interesting thing, the really cool thing, is that when you take pre-contemplative people, and it's not just information, it's really challenging assumptions. I can't give you research benefits of, okay, here are all the reasons you could change. That's not effective. It's to get people to challenge and understand their own thought process, to start thinking in a different way. Once you do that, once you start to challenge people's assumptions, which you can do through watching a video on the internet, by the way, then you move on to contemplative. And contemplative is where a lot of people get tripped up, because now you've realized that there's a problem. But the key hallmark of the contemplative phase is ambivalence or internal conflict. I recognize now that video games cause problems in my life, but I really love playing them. But I don't know what else to do with my life. But I'm still unemployed and I don't know how to fill my days. But this. And then people get really frustrated with themselves, because even though they know logically that they should change, they're not really addressing their internal conflict. So that's a whole different thing. And then once you work through that internal conflict, then you can change. Then you can actually start to act, because I know I need to stop playing video games, but there's this other part of me that doesn't want to. So then I wake up every day, what do I actually do? I don't change. I'm one of these people who's just sitting here watching and not actually quitting something or starting something or changing. That's actually okay too. It takes time to get through that ambivalent conflict, right? You don't just logically snap out of it. It's you have to work through that. It's almost I don't know if y'all have ever looked at a menu and it's do I want this or do I want this? It's not you suddenly snap to it. Right? It's a very short abbreviated time, but it'll do 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Well, what if I like this? What if I don't like this? You go through this little mental process in about a minute or two, or maybe 5 minutes, where you're struggling to decide what you want because there's conflict within you. And then you resolve that in some way and you pick something. So even in a menu, and ordering something off a menu, you can understand ambivalence a little bit. Okay? Once you get through ambivalence, then you can start to act. My point here, though, is that the first 2 stages of the stages of change model are completely internal. You don't have to do a damn thing. It's in here. This is where change happens. So watching is actually okay. Now what we're going to do is teach y'all a little bit about learning. So if I'm watching a video, at the end of the video, there's a cool concept got me to question my assumptions, but I don't actually change. I haven't like learned my lesson. So how do you learn your lesson? How do you incorporate the stuff from the video? So I'm going to ask y'all a question. Okay. What's the most effective way to study? Right? Because we know this. Like we can look at different options to understand literally how our brain learns. So let's say I've got 10 hours that I'm going to prepare for a test. Option number 1, I read the textbook for 10 hours. Option number 2, I read the textbook for 5 hours and I do practice questions for 5 hours. Which one is going to result in a better test score on average? Option 2, hands down. So this is really important to understand. We have a part of our brain called the hippocampus. Okay? Hippocampus is what takes short-term memory and compounds it into long-term memory. Once it's in long-term memory, we can access it and utilize it. So when something is in short-term memory, it doesn't really change our behavior. It really has to be like baked into us. And that happens in the hippocampus. By the way, also happens during sleep. Okay, is when we compound short-term memory into long-term memory. But the other key thing is that learning something involves practicing recall, not putting it in over and over and over and over and over again. So if you don't want to do anything to change, you actually don't need to. But if you want to change without doing a damn thing, which is actually, ironically, where most of the change happens. Most of the change happens without action. Right? Because who are you fighting against? You're fighting with yourself. You're fighting with your motivation. You're fighting with your lack of motivation, your laziness, your discipline. All the stuff is in here. So here are 3 things. Really simple. If you don't want to do a damn thing, 3 things you can do completely on your ass without doing anything. The first is don't chain watch informational content or motivational videos. So when you chain watch something, nothing ever gets put into long-term memory because you have a certain amount of RAM. And whenever you have like a certain amount of RAM, what starts happening is stuff starts getting overwritten. So we'll even I'll call this out explicitly in my interviews, and I also do this with patients. But what I've learned is when I teach someone something, or like in an interview, like why do we have interviews at about 2 hours instead of 3 hours? It's because by the 3rd hour, most people forget what happened in the 1st hour. And we don't want people to forget what happened in the 1st hour because it's not like what happened in the 3rd hour is better than what happened in the 1st hour. So one of my favorite phrases from a spiritual guru is enough for today. Enough for today. You have only a certain amount of RAM. And if you really want to learn your lesson, you can't keep learning new stuff. You have to give it time to sink in. So don't chain watch informational videos or motivational videos or whatever. The more you replace your RAM, the less you're going to learn. So it's actually watch less stuff. You don't have to do anything, but just, so if you watch something that you really think, oh, wow, this could actually help me a lot, pause. Don't keep watching stuff. Okay? So don't chain watch. Don't overwrite your RAM. Let it go down into the hard drive. Second thing you've got to do is reflect. It's not a damn thing. It's not doing a damn thing. Reflect. What does that mean? We're going to mirror this process of, okay, I can read the textbook for 10 hours, or I can read the textbook and I can do practice questions. What is the equivalent of practice questions for changing? It's actually just reflection. So instead of chain watching videos, what you're going to do is watch one video and you're going to go sit somewhere. And you're not going to distract your mind with anything else, and you're going to reflect on what you watched. Not going to do anything. Just reflect. Practice recall. Okay, what did the video say? What do I think about that? What's right about the video? What's wrong about the video? Play with the information. So this is the other thing that we sort of know is that Mastery within the human mind comes through experimentation. You can follow recipes as much as you want to, and you'll learn how to be a decent cook. But to be a chef that creates dishes, you have to play around with stuff. So if you want to change, you've got to play around with it in your mind. Okay, what about this do I accept? What about this do I not accept? The more that you recall that information out of your mind, the more it solidifies into learning and the more that change happens. So we see this principle playing around with the information is also what we do, for example, in coaching or in therapy. We challenge people's assumptions in coaching. Right? So it's not about treating a diagnosis or anything like that. If someone says, I'm stuck in this bad job and there's no way I can get out, we want to challenge those assumptions and we get people to reflect on their life. And as people challenge their assumptions and reflect on their life, I kid you not, and if you have worked with a coach, you can ask your coach this question. A lot of coaches will come in and will say, we're like this person, they're talking about this thing, but they just don't do it, and I want to push them, I want to push them. And what do we tell our coaches at that time? Should you push them? No, absolutely not. And inevitably what happens is the coach feels, I'm doing a bad job. Week 5, they're not making progress. Week 6, they're not making progress. Week 7, coach shows up and they're like, I don't know what the hell happened. They did it all. And seriously, if y'all have a coach, ask your coach if they've experienced this before. 99% chance they'll say yes. This is how change happens. It's like the iceberg, where most of that subconscious change happens underneath. The interesting thing is if your coach pushes you, what happens when you get pushed? A lot of people will dig their heels in. But when you create that vacuum of space, the client will step forward and do it. Right? Beautiful. So chat got it. So it's really hard to do the reflection work and to think about this kind of stuff. But that's actually all. You don't have to do anything. Right? So like this is where like when we designed our coaching program, we looked at the science of change and the science of learning. And now we're sharing it with you right now. You can do this on your own. May not be quite as effective because you can't challenge your assumptions quite in the way that they can. But if you're just watching information, that's okay, right? Just watch it. Don't chain watch it. Reflect on it. Play around with it. Sit on a park bench somewhere and think about it. Why is this so hard for me? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? And that process of reflection is actually going to engage the same circuits as like the recall. And once we start recalling it, we start to get mastery over it. Once we have mastery over it, then it's in our tool belt. Third thing you've got to do or not do, which should be really easy because the whole point here is that you're not going to do anything. So what do we call someone who doesn't do anything? What do we call someone who doesn't act? People are saying lazy, bum, lazy. Incorrect. Slacker. We call that person patient. What does it mean to be patient? What does someone who is impatient do? Anything. Everything. What does it mean to be impatient? It means that I can't wait. I have to act. Third thing is be patient. And for those of you that don't want to do a damn thing, patience should actually come easily for you. It won't, but. Right? So if you want to change your life without acting, these are the 3 things. Be patient. Don't override your RAM. And reflect. That's where change really happens. So what tends to happen when people get impatient, they haven't done the requisite work underneath. And so they're launching an expedition that is doomed to failure. Be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. It doesn't help. Recognize that change happens slowly. just as an example, people are like, how slowly? So I basically failed my first year of college, right? Had like a 1.6 GPA or whatever. 9 years later, I got into medical school. You're like, oh my God, 9 years? That's a long time. Does that mean that it's going to take me 9 years? I don't think so. So the good news is with help, you can see change much more rapidly, right? We don't have people come into our coaching program. All right, here's your 9-year plan. We start to see change within 6 to 8 weeks, and that really solidifies around 12 weeks, 16 weeks, right? So there's a process that you can speed it up. Also, in terms of therapy, if you look at like, standard trials for psychotherapy are looking at changes at the 8-week mark, 12-week mark, things like that. So with help, you can do it faster, but be patient with yourself. Recognize that change takes time. And if you're not ready to act, because what happens when you force yourself to act, when you act impatiently, you just doom yourself to failure. As you doom yourself to failure, your hope decreases. It becomes harder to act. Right? If I apply for 5 different jobs without spending the time and energy to build a good resume, and I become more and more impatient, like, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose hope in the job application process, and I'm going to start to think, okay, there's no way I'm ever going to get a job. So be patient with yourself. So if you want to change your life without lifting a finger, it's fine to watch stuff. Just don't chain watch. Give that stuff an opportunity to sink in, literally. Let your short-term memory compound into the hippocampus as long-term memory. And then what happens when something is long-term memory? It bubbles up. Right? When I ask you what's 2 plus 2, the answer bubbles up. Why does it bubble up? Because it's been solidified within you. And what do people struggle with? They struggle with the fact that the right thoughts don't bubble up. How do you get the right thoughts to bubble up? You let them solidify. So don't chain watch informational or motivational videos. Number 2, reflect. Practice the process of bubbling up. Bubbling up is natural, but you can recall it. So reflect. After you watch a video, go and sit somewhere and do nothing. And think about it. Okay, what applies to me? Does this apply to me? Does this not apply to me? Do I disagree with it? Do I not disagree with it? Why does this feel so bad? What do I notice within myself? Wow, this is kind of weird. Like the more I'm reflecting, the more I'm sort of starting to feel guilty. But what am I even feeling guilty about? What do I have to feel guilty about? Oh, interesting. What I feel guilty about is that I've known this all along, but I haven't been able to do it. Third thing is be patient. Don't act. Give it time. If you do these 3 things, you will be well along your road to change. Can you take notes during the reflective period? Absolutely. All right, Dr. K, it's time to go apply. Goodbye. As much as you're memeing, honestly, like that's probably not a bad idea. Right? So like, let's just think about this, like as you're memeing, right? So like on Twitch, you're like, all right, I'm peacing out. If you're on YouTube, you're looking at the suggested playlist and there's another, like actually like, I know it's a meme, but that's recall. Y'all get that? Gigonomics is applying the information. Right? And so this is going to be kind of weird where it's sort of like, I guess if you really want to have this drive home, then leave. And I want you all to just think about that for a second, because even if we go over, let's say like we cover 3 or 4 concepts today, at the end of it, the other reason if I am trying to get you all to stay, right, is notice what happened. So notice how you felt over the course of the last 10 minutes, right? And then like, what's going to happen to that feeling or the revelation or what you've understood as I cover the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? You're going to forget. It'll fade away. It won't sink in. Right? Step 1 was don't chain watch stuff because you're going to overwrite your RAM. So just Alo is saying ban them so they apply what they learned. No, see, that's the opposite. They have to leave. We can't ban them. Do you understand that? It's the same thing as a coach not pushing you. Because if we ban them, they're like, screw you. So one of the most rewarding experiences I one time had was someone who came into my office, super generic scenario. Happened more than once, but I'm thinking about one person in particular, who's anxious about getting fired. And a year later, after doing a lot of internal work, they quit. There's a huge difference between when life does something to you and you choose to do it, even if it's the same thing. Me choosing to break up with a partner is different from the partner dumping me, even though the end result is like sort of the same. So y'all have to act. The more that we try to force you to act, the worse it's going to go. And so we're actually going to go all the way out there. It's like, you don't even act at all. Because the truth of the matter is, the way that we learn, the way that we change is actually not through action. It's up here. Okay. So now I'm genuinely confused. Like, should we practice what we preach and just end stream now, or do we want to cover more stuff? Mods around, poll. I have more stuff to share. But it's sort of like, I don't know if that makes us a hypocrite. We're like, reflect. I didn't anticipate that. I guess we should have done this last. Okay, I think... Oh, God. The meme lords. All right, it looks close, but it looks like the... So here's my main reason for continuing. So I know it's going to sound kind of weird, but I have one really simple reason that I'd like to continue. So if we stopped, everyone who benefited from the last segment will benefit. But there are a lot of people that may not have benefited from it and could benefit from what we have to say next. So even though it's sort of like going all in for the people who resonated with that, and we could be abandoning everyone else who's like, that's not my issue. Does that make sense? And most people are saying no, so we'll defer to that. So for those of you who really felt like that was great, you can leave if you want to. Oh my God. I've never been on a platform or seen a platform where someone tries to get their viewers to leave. But really for their benefit, what have I done? I've painted myself into a corner. No, but really, I mean, it's like, look, if you want to stop and reflect, like, totally fine, right? There's a VOD for this. Maybe some of this stuff will be uploaded to YouTube. Like, honestly, like, you do you. Okay? Yeah, pro streamer. All right, let's move on before I dig myself. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Okay. All right. Let's do this. The internet is making me insecure. This isn't just about stuff like Instagram posts or people showing their amazing lives. There are multiple things on the internet that have made me insecure. One example is the whole alpha and beta thing, which constantly makes me wonder if I'm one of these betas. I feel worse about myself because I feel like all of my imperfections are being mocked and that I'm being shamed for them. Whenever I'm doing anything unproductive, I feel more shame because of the amount of people online who mock people who do it. For example, the whole hustle culture thing makes me feel like if I'm not working hard all the time, I should be ashamed. Even though I don't really want a kind of life where I'm grinding work all the time and never have fun and relax. Any advice on how to counter this? So this is like kind of an issue. So the internet seems to feed or even like make you insecure. And there are some ways in which we know the internet makes us insecure. Like if you look at like social media and stuff like that, right? Where you're seeing everyone else doing all this awesome stuff. Let's not even get started about things like filters and stuff like that for photos. I recently learned that there's a particular social media app that when you take a selfie on the app, automatically applies filters to it. And so you just look prettier on that app than you do in any of the other apps or in real life. But the truth of the matter is that there's the stuff that we kind of know makes us insecure. But then there's this whole other crop of like positive growth stuff that also makes us kind of feel insecure. Like all this like hustle culture stuff, I think is a great example where people are out there telling you, you got to hustle, you got to hustle, you got to hustle, you got to hustle. You got to be different. Stop being you because you ain't good enough. Right? Like that's what the internet, that's the message that the internet sends us. So what's going on here? Like, why does this happen? What exactly is happening? And what do you do about it? Because then you're not quite sure, right? This is the really tricky thing is like, you don't know like if this alpha beta thing is real or this hustle culture is real. It means, first of all, that you're not doing a good job, but there's also like, this is what you need to fix and then you'll be happy. Right? Because that's the tricky thing about this stuff. It's one thing on Instagram to be comparative and then like say, like, okay, like we know that this is bad for me. But if I adopt the hustle culture, like, will I be more successful? So I don't know if like this insecurity is something that I need to fix or it's an artificial insecurity. But then I think it's great because a lot of people in our community are like very reflective, so it's good because even though I don't really want it, I feel ashamed. But like, even if I did that, I don't want to work all the time. So what the hell? Like, should I be a different person and want to work all the time? Like, should I do it anyway and overcome what I want and like give into the hustle culture? Like, I can't figure out whether this insecurity is something that I need to fix by changing who I am and changing what I do, or this insecurity is like artificial and sort of like I should not even have it in the first place. Does that make sense? Is the insecurity real or unreal? So, great question. Short answer. A lot of it is unreal. So let's just do a quick experiment. So what we're going to do is, am I a beta? Oh, look. Am I a beta male? 16 beta signs and how to fix them. 15 signs you're a beta male. Ooh, there's even a personality test. Interesting. So, am I a beta male? Your alpha guide. Look at this. So, what do y'all see on this website? What do y'all notice? Okay, let's start at the top. Okay, your alpha guide. This looks like I'm in the right place. Okay, support me on Patreon. Donate. Okay. Oh, look, desperate. Difficulty of refusing a bad deal. Oh, look, there's a link here. You're an introvert. You worry about people's opinions, i.e., you have empathy and compassion. How to fix it. Nobody cares. You can't please everyone. It feels awesome. Oh, my God. Value, tonality, like how to fix it. Look at all these things like that you can fix because you're busted. It needs to be fixed. You're in the friend zone. How to fix it. Yeah, okay, good. This is great. Let's look at escaping the friend zone. It goes on and on like, oh, you have no self-discipline. How to fix it. You're physically weak. How to fix it. So what do y'all think? Most of you are interested in detachment. Oh, look at that. Oh my God, there's a controller. That's me. You dislike successful people. How to fix it. Didn't we cover this one already? You're weak. Oh, look, 5 essential qualities. Oh, you may also like, okay, great. This is fantastic. Look at all this high quality information. A complete guide. Support me on Patreon. It's great. Let's look at the next one. 15 signs you're a beta male. Ooh, look at this. Videos, luxury, podcast, net worth. What does that even mean? Like, what is this? Net worth of this person? Community, merch, and courses. Mind mastery and Bitcoin essentials. Oh, wow. This person must be an expert in psychology and is an expert in crypto. Wow. Look at that. Okay, what is a beta male? Time to put that to the test. Number one, you don't feel like life is getting better and better. You're a beta. Never faced your bullies. Oh my God. Oops. I can't tell if it's supposed to say oops. And look, oh, look at this. Courses to elevate your life, mind mastery. Huh. Okay, enough about that stuff. Let's look at the hustle culture. Wow, 100 plus best side hustle ideas to make $500 in your spare time. Wow, profitable ideas to make extra money on the side. Too many choices? Start the free challenge. Oh my God, this looks great. Side Hustle Nation, amplify your learning power. So what do y'all think? Do you think Side Hustle Nation can fix this problem for me? What do y'all think? Do you think they can fix this problem for me if I maybe give them some money? Do you think that maybe they create emotionally engaging content that makes me insecure about myself? And then, oh wow, get started with the Field Agent app. Over $10,000 a year. Oh my God. Too many. Let's start the free challenge. 5-day 500 challenge. Look at this. Estimated royalties. Wow. I should do all this stuff. This person definitely. Oh my God, the side hustle. Look at all these great ideas. I know. Oh, I can't pay my rent. Stupid me. I have all these student loans and I have all these microtransactions. I'm only like part of the way to where I need to be in Diablo Immortal. I should have been a cracked screen repair service person. That's the mistake that I made. This goes on? Like what on earth? Okay. Want to be an entrepreneur? Yeah, like I absolutely want to be an entrepreneur. Let me get my free copy. Right? 44 profitable ideas. Wow. So let's understand like what's going on here, chat. So, the advertising industry made a really interesting discovery, which is that if someone is insecure, they will spend money. If someone is insecure and you give them something, like if you look at the cosmetic industry, do you have wrinkles? Do you have cellulite? By the way, I don't think there's any way physiologically to get rid of cellulite, based on the last time I looked into that, which is like years ago. Do you have these problems that, by the way, are unsolvable? Here, purchase this cream. Bonus points if it doesn't actually do anything because it won't fix your problem, then you'll need to purchase an additional cream. So if you feel like this alpha beta crap is making you insecure, that's because it's what it's designed to do. It's designed to make you feel insecure. Now, part of this is like sort of the clickbaity nature of the internet, which even we are guilty of. There's a great post recently on our subreddit about someone was like, Dr. K is a hypocrite. And it was a clickbait title. And they're like, y'all are using clickbait YouTube videos. They're like, there's clickbait in the title. Some of this is the way that the game is played, right? So some of it is sort of like, if you have something that you want to offer people, you have to point out how what you're offering people will help. So if I'm trying to sell a burger, I will ask people, are you hungry? But there's a huge difference between offering a service like, do you need a haircut? By the way, I cut hair. There's a big difference between offering a service to genuinely help people and breeding an insecurity through the way that you talk to people and engage with people to make them feel worse about themselves so that they will pull out their wallet. Do y'all get that? Like, if you want to help someone, you have to let people know in what ways you can help them. So you have to say, like, okay, if you have this problem, we can help you. Like, you know, if I'm a medical doctor and it's like, you know, do you have erectile dysfunction? I can help you with that, right? As a medical doctor. Do you have diabetes? I can help you with that as a medical doctor. Like, you have to educate people about what services you provide. The challenge is that a lot of this hustle culture crap and alpha beta crap and whatever, because like this person like not only has mind mastery, like he's going to teach me how to master my mind, or she. For some reason, I thought it was a man. Maybe speaks more to my bias as opposed to the actual what it was. And Bitcoin Essentials, y'all. 2 courses. I can learn how to be a Bitcoin billionaire and control my mind. Newsflash, a lot of the people in crypto don't know anything about controlling their mind. So if it's making you insecure, it's like, this comes back to the question is like, is this something I need to fix because like I am not good enough and I should do these things? Or is this making me insecure? The answer is it's making you insecure. Like we just looked at the website. Like, do you think that at the end of that, how do you think people feel about themselves? So what do you do about it? The first thing that you've got to understand is that they're good at like engaging with your negativity. We are too, for that matter, right? Like we talk about what the problem is and here's how we're going to try to help you. The question is, at the end of it, how do you feel about yourself? Are you moving a step in the right direction or a step in the wrong direction? Do you feel worse about yourself? Are these people imposing a set of values on you that you don't agree with? Or did you make a meme about how you watch stuff and you don't want to do anything? And the person was like, actually, if that's where you are, we're going to meet you where you're at and we're going to help you anyway. You don't need to become this other thing. You're perfect the way that you are. And there's a way that you can move forward from your current location. So a lot of this insecurity tries to pull people in a different direction. And oftentimes, not only do they tell you what all the problems are, they're like, here are all the solutions, like here. Right? And it's like, sometimes that's appropriate because it's like, you know, if I'm as a medical doctor, it's like, if you've got some problems with, you know, your breathing, by the way, okay, let me do a diagnostic test and tell you what your problem is and then give you an inhaler for your asthma. So like there are reasons that you do this properly. The question is, what's like the end goal there? And so how do you deal with this kind of insecurity? Like, I don't know how to say this, but first of all, recognize that this whole crap is not, in a sense, it's designed to help you. I genuinely do believe that a lot of these people are trying to help you. But like, does it kind of move you in the right direction? Does it feel right? Like, you don't need to adopt hustle culture if you don't want to be hustling all the time. Like, I do not want y'all, it's fine to earn a little bit of extra money. I've done a side hustle. Hell, this whole thing, by the way, I don't know if y'all know this, was a side hustle, right? So there's like value to side hustle. There's value to what some of the people say about the alphas and betas or whatever, right? Not being able to set boundaries, things like that. That has nothing to do with alpha beta. That's just like basic human skills. You also don't even have to be a man. It's just as important for women and non-binary people, arguably even more important, depending on who you are and what the argument is, to set boundaries. I don't really think so. I think everyone needs to learn how to set boundaries. Everyone needs to learn how to respect themselves. So the first thing that you've got to do is understand, like, that this is their MO. That breeding insecurity is actually what they're trying to do. You're not insecure because you're deficient in all these 5 or 6 different things. They are telling you that you're deficient in all these kinds of things, and they're trying to convince you that you're deficient in all of these kinds of things. Is to see what it's like, you know, The fun thing about doing a magic trick is like not knowing how it works, right? And when you figure out how the magic trick works, it takes the magic away. It takes the effect away. It takes the power away. Same thing happens with this crap. So first thing is understand what they're doing to you. Second thing is reflect about why you're engaging with this crap in the first place. What is it that causes you to gravitate towards these kinds of things? Because somewhere along the way, like it's presenting itself to you, but you're also engaging with it. And so the stuff about alpha beta resonates with people because it speaks to their insecurity. This hustle culture stuff speaks to this idea that like, I don't want to work a standard 9 to 5 and I don't like this crap. I want to do something. I want to be my own boss. Like there's so many different things that each of these things speaks to, which are genuine feelings that you have. I hate doing the same thing day after day after day after day after day. I hate really working really hard and seeing no benefit, or slacking off and seeing no punishment. So I'm just going to AFK at work and do the minimum possible, which is the ideal way to maximize money for effort, but it doesn't make me feel happy, fulfilled, or useful in any way, shape, or form. So enter the side hustle where you can be your own boss, and the amount that you put in determines how much you get out. And people telling you, by the way, that if you work your ass off, you will be successful. And like, that's something that I don't entirely disagree with. I don't entirely agree with. Because I think that if you work your ass off, will you, chances are, do better? Yes. But there are a lot of ways in which I've worked my ass off. And there are a lot of people that I've met who have worked just as hard as I have, even harder, and are not nearly in the same place. I've worked with single parents who work 2.5 jobs, work more hours than I do, and make less money than I do. So it's not just hard work, right? So I use this term karma to kind of encompass all that crap. So they're designed to make you insecure. That's what they're trying to do. So how do you get rid of it? Like, first of all, understand what they're doing. You know, get a different angle for the magic trick. Just look at it. Like, all it takes is just a little bit of objective, critical looking at. Like, we did it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We just looked at the website. It's like, what do you see? What is this person trying to accomplish? As you see what's, behind the stage, then what you want to start to do is look at what appeals to you. Why does this resonate with you? And explore where that comes from. And as you sort of discover where that comes from, be a little bit critical with yourself about, okay, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to put this together? Like, how am I going to fix this? Where does this insecurity come from? Do I need to see a therapist? If I don't feel happy about my body, what can I do about that? Do I need to order this special cream that's on sale now for a limited time for $129.99 instead of $199.99? 99.9999999? Or should I just start doing something today that makes me feel a little bit better about myself and moving in the wrong direction? Should I exercise a little bit? Go for a walk? Eat a piece of fruit? So it's normal to feel insecure in this culture of the internet. The reason it's normal is because that's what it does to you. It's normal to be wet when you're in the rain because that's what rain does to you. It's normal to be insecure when you surround yourself with this kind of culture. So we could say something as simple as don't engage with it, but that's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not everything. Because the fact of the matter is there's something within you that wants to engage with it. And it's satisfying that part that is ultimately going to give you freedom. So this is something that I've always been confused about. Absolute resonance is saying rainwater is wet. Is water wet, or is what water touches wet? I actually don't know. Conceit's like, are we doing koans now? No, I'm like genuinely curious because we usually something that's wet is something that has gotten water, right? That's what wet actually means. Because something that's wet has water in it. You know what I mean? So the sea is no. I don't know. Sounds like you're the doctor. You should know. I don't know everything. That's what I'm asking y'all. Is water wet or is what water touches wet? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Okay. Got one more thing to cover. And we're going to wrap up for the day. All right. So is it okay to use technology in media as a safety net / coping mechanism? Hi, Dr. K. I was recently listening to your discussion about improving sleep, and you mentioned that as humans, we tend not to give ourselves enough time to mentally process our thoughts, and that we usually will use distractions such as gaming, social media, Twitch, YouTube to repress certain thoughts. I'm someone who does this almost all the time, and I want to know how I can break away from this mindset and allow myself to be able to sit with and process my thoughts. A bit of information about me. I'm a 24-year-old man currently living at home on a small island in the UK after completing uni degree and working in the office for a year. I now only work 3 days a week for a couple hours doing takeout deliveries, with the rest of my week being free time. I've struggled a lot with anxiety in the past, having had multiple panic attacks, with the last couple of months developed into generalized anxiety disorder. My anxiety mainly revolves around thanatophobia and worrying about inevitable events in the future, such as loss. I find it difficult to stay within the moment with my thoughts and not get scared, especially when I'm by myself without distractions. I've recently started CBT therapy and have a good support network around me with family and friends. Awesome. I'm able to do normal things such as eat properly, go to the gym, and socialize. Double awesome. I also don't smoke or do drugs, and I rarely drink. Triple awesome. Because of my anxiety, I'm only able to stay mentally strong in these situations when I have some kind of distraction. This usually comes in the form of having my phone close by and being able to check social media or watch Twitch or YouTube videos, or just distracting myself by having a task to do. Even when trying to fall asleep, I'm only able to fall asleep if I have a video or stream on in the background. I've tried limiting screen time and making sure I spend a lot of time outdoors, but even when the gym, driving, stores, etc., I feel like the need to listen or watch videos and streams. I'm planning to go to Japan for a year in September on a working holiday, and I hope this will help me as I will be a lot busier and be able to distract myself more naturally. But I'm still worried about that in my downtime, I will feel scared and lonely if I'm not connected with other people in some kind of way. The question I want to ask is this a healthy coping mechanism to deal with anxiety? And what are some techniques, alternatives that someone can use to be able to stay calm by themselves and be able to process their thoughts without worrying and the need to feel connected to stay calm? Thank you if you take your time to read this. I'm a longtime lurker and I listen to a lot of content on Spotify while working. And it has really helped me improve my view on certain aspects of life. Okay. So this is interesting because sometimes we do a lot of stuff right. We go to therapy. We're careful about substances. We exercise. We socialize. We've got friends and support groups. But we still kind of feel anxious. We still sort of struggle to get away from technology. And we're not really sure, right? Because like if my life ain't falling apart, is it okay to use technology? And how do we know how much of it is okay? Because a lot of times when we talk about things like technology and social media, we're like, we got our pitchforks and we're like, no, bad, stop playing video games, stop doing this, stop, it's so bad and toxic, toxic, toxic. And then we also have this sort of idea of someone who's like addicted, right? It's like living at home, doesn't leave their four walls and stuff like that, right? And sometimes we'll even talk to our community as if all of y'all are like that. But the truth of the matter is that most people within the HG community are kind of like this person. Some stuff they're doing really well, some stuff they're working on. So how do you know? If I'm not like a degenerate technology user, right? Like, how do I know what's a healthy way to manage my anxiety with technology and what's kind of like unhealthy? So there are a couple of different principles that we can sort of look at. The first thing that we've sort of talked about in the past before is that generally speaking, if it causes a problem, it is a problem. So the first threshold to understand, so I'll get parents who will ask me, okay, how do I know if my kid is addicted to video games? And my answer is pretty simple. If you look at all of the diagnostic criteria for disorders, psychiatric diagnoses that relate to addiction, the most common element is impairment of function. So how do you know if you've got a drinking problem? Well, if it causes a problem, it is a problem. So if your alcohol is affecting your physical health, if your alcohol is affecting your mental health, if your alcohol is affecting your professional work, if it's affecting your academic work, if it's affecting your relationships, i.e. if someone is threatening divorce because you drink, then it is a problem. So that's when we sort of diagnose something as a disorder. But beyond that, there's a whole range of healthy norms or unhealthy norms even. And so what we really got to do is understand, how do I know whether this technology is a problem or not? And more importantly, there are some things I've noticed in my life around technology, and like, how do I stop doing those? So what I'd love to do today is help y'all navigate this question of, even if I'm doing pretty okay and my life is not falling apart, is it okay to use technology? And like, how do I start to distance myself from it? And in doing so, what we're going to do is go through a couple of really, really basic principles of addiction that even matter when people aren't addicted. So this is some basic stuff about the brain and how our brain sort of does behavioral reinforcement so that we can understand how to change our behavior if we want to spend a little bit less time with technology. Okay? What we're going to start with is this. Okay. So I'm able to do normal things such as eat properly, go to the gym, and socialize. I also don't smoke, etc. But because of my anxiety, I am only able to stay mentally strong in these situations when I have some kind of distraction. So this is actually the wrong way to think about it, and we'll explain a little bit. So what we're going to do, by the way, if y'all want to learn about neurobiology of addiction, Nora Volkow is brilliant. The best researcher that I have encountered in terms of the neurobiology of addiction. And what we're going to do is look at a couple of interesting principles here. So let me try to find this. Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of stuff that we sort of know about the preoccupation or anticipation stage and stuff that we know about cravings from addiction. So we're going to talk about this for a second. So these are the three things that we kind of need to focus on if you're trying to figure out, first of all, whether technology and social media use is a safe thing to do or whether it's causing problems, and how to use it less, even if you aren't necessarily addicted to it. Okay? So the first thing is to understand the process of what it does for you. So when I feel anxiety in a particular situation, and I turn to a device, what does that do to my anxiety? In the moment and in the future. Let's start by answering these two questions. What does it do to my anxiety in the moment? Numbs it. Excellent. What does it do to my anxiety in the future? What do y'all think? Gets worse, compounds. At best, it stays about the same. So there's something important to understand here. If you are in a social situation, so now I'm going to ask y'all, very good. Good job. So here's the more advanced question. If I'm in a social situation, so what a lot of people will do, actually, let me take a step back. Once they realize this, they're like, oh, so if I distract myself from my anxiety, it's not actually going to get better. Okay? So therefore, what I need to do is stop distracting myself and muscle through the anxiety. So if I go to a social situation and I resist the impulse to use the phone, and I resist the impulse to use the phone, and I resist the impulse to use the phone, and my anxiety rises and rises and rises, and then I crack, and I use the phone, what does that do to my ability to resist the anxiety down the road? Did I level up some? What do y'all think? So if I resist my phone for the first 15 minutes and then I give in. So some people are saying it weakens it. Some people are saying it improves things. Some people are saying it's staying the same. So this is where it gets a little complicated, but let me give you all another example. So let's say that my kid walks in and the kid says, Daddy, can I please watch something can I have some screen time? And if I say no, and then they start crying, and then I say no, and then they throw a temper tantrum, and I give in, what does that do for what kind of behavior does that shape for them next time around? What is the child more likely to do? What have I reinforced? I've reinforced the tantrum. So this is what's so devastating for a lot of parents, is their kid gets out of control and they give in. And then they come to me and they're like, the more I try to fix this problem, the worse it gets. I've tried everything and nothing works, and they're getting worse and worse and worse. It's because the more that you try to do things, the more that what you're reinforcing for your kid is the only way I'm going to get this is temper tantrum. Because we're trying this other BS stuff for a little while. That's not working. That's not. And then what is the one message the kid gets every time you try aromatherapy or listening to this kind of music, or we're going to meditate, or we're going to do this? All this crap doesn't seem to work. But what is the one thing you're reinforcing throughout all that, which is temper tantrum gets you the game? So interestingly enough, resisting cravings and then giving in can sometimes teach our brain that if I really want this thing, I just need to hit him with a level 10 craving. Level 1 craving won't do it. Level 2 craving won't do it. Level 3 craving won't do it. I'm just going to slam this person with this craving that's so hard because that's what gets it to me. And we sort of see this in people who struggle to be sober, is that the cravings seem to be getting worse and worse and worse over time the more that they fight them. You all get this? So even when it comes to staying strong in a social situation, the only way I can manage my anxiety in a social situation, the only way I can stay strong, which is the phrasing that this person used, I'm only able to mentally stay strong in these situations when I have some kind of distraction. This is not staying strong, my friend. This is actually breeding weakness. I don't mean that. I mean, I realize that was a mean thing to say. But like, really, what you're doing is you're reinforcing the craving and the usage of the thing. Now, this isn't your fault. It's how our brain is designed. So you're not doing anything wrong in a sense. Like, you can't be expected to know. Right? I'm sorry, that came off as harsher, but that's the truth. You're not actually mentally staying strong because you're using the thing to keep you strong. It's artificial. Right? So this is like addiction, craving, behavioral reinforcement, super basic stuff. If you give in to the phone is what you will be giving into more and more and more and more. So the first thing is decide ahead of time. Either give in to your phone right away. Don't even try to resist it. It's okay to sometimes resist it. Not even resist it at all. Just give into it completely. Oddly enough, that's the right way to set up healthy technology habits with kids. Dad, can I please have the iPad? Absolutely. Just take it. Dad, can I have the iPad? No. You don't want to say no all the time, but if there's a no, it's a no. And it ain't going to become a yes no matter what happens. And since you can't fight all the time, it's actually healthier to say yes 5 times and no once, as opposed to struggle to say no every single time and then cave into a yes. Does that make sense? You all get that? You can try to spend your energy and lose 6 battles, or you can give up 5 of those battles and win 1. Do y'all get that? So I can try to fight with my kid about the screen, and I can fight again, and then they throw a temper tantrum and I give in. Then I fight the next time they throw a temper tantrum and they give in. Instead, it's actually better to just say, yeah, you can go ahead and have it. But with the one time that I say no, no amount of temper tantrums is going to work. And I may not have the energy to do that every single time. That's the key thing. That's why I have to take a couple of L's to get a couple of W's. When it comes to your social media usage in social situations or phone usage, that's where you've got to decide before you walk in the door, is today a day that I'm going to absolutely be off my phone? Or is it today going to be a day where I'm allowed to use my phone? And you decide ahead of time. You don't have to beat yourself up. And this is where there's a part of you that will say, every time I'm going to never use my phone again. And then you get into this situation where you're going to lose all those battles because you're spreading out your willpower amongst each of these things. So you have to let yourself use the phone, and don't let yourself use the phone at particular times. Just be very clear about it ahead of time. You can alter that reinforcement circuitry in your mind. So today is a day that I'm going to be technology free. It's going to be tough. That's principle number 1. So don't give in to the craving. That's the worst thing. The thing is, you can satisfy it right away before even a craving even happens. Or resist the craving to the bitter end. But don't give in to a craving, especially as it ramps up. Okay? That's issue number 1. Issue number 2. Even when I'm in the gym, stores, driving, etc., I feel the need to listen to podcasts or watch videos and streams. So second thing that our good friend Volkow discovered is that there are 6 discrete neuroscientific deficits in people who have addictions. One of those deficits is a lack of awareness of your internal state. So here's how to understand this. If you talk to people who relapse, you ask them, how did you relapse? And they're like, I don't know what happened. I was doing great until I lost it. So as people have studied the brains of people who struggle with relapse, what we sort of discover, and you can do this like when you do therapy with someone, what you actually discover is you weren't fine for the month beforehand. Actually, there was tiny insult after tiny insult after tiny stress after tiny stress after tiny stress, and this thing happened and this thing happened and this thing happened, and then your emotions got to be too much for you. And then you use the only coping mechanism that you could in that moment. But what there actually is a blindness to your internal emotional state when you struggle with addictions. And so their experience of it is, I was doing fine and then it happened, which is not oftentimes how it is. It's actually, there's a bunch of stuff that's going on. It's all like under the surface. And so I don't see it happening. And so this is really, really important. If you ever want to alter your behavior, you have to understand, I still feel the need. Then the question is, what is the need? So you have to tunnel down further into awareness of the self. So if you want to overcome the behavior, you have to know, okay, what is this need? What am I feeling in this moment? Why do I need to listen to a podcast? Right? And here's like, why do I have to listen to a stream right now? Like, what's going on? What would happen if I didn't do that? How would I feel? What would I think? And that's where you'll discover all kinds of things jumbled together. So let's just pick 2. One thing you'll discover is that unless your mind is distracted, especially if you have a diagnosed anxiety disorder, that the more you're distracted, the less space the anxiety has to come into your mind. So if you lay awake at night in bed without any kind of distraction, all kinds of dark thoughts will come up. That's why when I was struggling with addiction, I couldn't go to bed unless I passed out the second I hit the pillow. The most painful part of my day was trying to go to sleep. Because first of all, I couldn't fall asleep. And secondly, that experience of not being able to fall asleep was such mentally awful, like it was like torture for hours. The worst part of my day. All of the ways that I was screwing up my life came bubbling up. And I had no defense, no distraction, no shield. So you may discover that all your anxious thoughts come up, but if you really pay attention, you'll discover all kinds of other things. Like, let's be productive. Like, if I'm listening to a podcast while I'm falling asleep, then I will learn something. And learning things is good. And I will be making progress in life. And it won't be, I'll be using my time productively because it's important for me to be productive. And if I feel productive, then I won't feel so much like a failure. And so let me go on doing this productive stuff, which, by the way, may not actually move your life forward. So you're going to discover all kinds of other stuff in there. That's not just distraction from anxiety. I have to use my time wisely. So that's something that I went through. I was like listening to audiobooks about development all the time. And then I was like, wait, why am I doing this? What is this actually? I'd become a self-help junkie. You all heard this term? Self-help junkie. They're still junkies. Just addicted to something else. Right? So you may discover like some amount of I need to feel productive. Because the more productive I feel, I'll feel better about myself. I'm learning something. I'm growing. Here in my garage, I read 300 books a day or whatever. Right? There's this idea that if we're productive, hustle culture, I got to be I saw some video where someone was like, cooking is the worst ROI investment that you can have in your life, which is I guess technically true. I wonder, and so it's I never cook at home. It's the only thing that may be equally bad ROI is pooping, I guess. So do you outsource that too? So there's this idea that knowledge is like growth in some way, and we sort of give in to some of these feelings that are positive in nature, right? I want to feel good about myself. The key thing, though, is that you have to have awareness as to what's driving the behavior. And as we develop this in a clinical setting, it helps people overcome addictions. As we understand it about ourselves, we will understand where that need comes from, and we'll be able to hopefully address the need at its root and therefore get rid of the leaves and the stem and the fruit. We'll get rid of that behavior at the end of the road by sort of addressing the root need down below. And at a minimum, we'll raise awareness of it, and awareness precedes control. So that's something that's in ancient yoga we've understood for a while, which all you have to do is ever go get dental work, and you'll understand that when you're numb, you can't control anything. Right? That's how, because you can't feel anything, so you can't control anything. If you're like me and you lose games of Dota, it's probably because you're not aware of what's happening. And once I have awareness, maybe as a support, I should actually buy support items. Maybe keeping my carry alive who's got a damage item is better than me having a damage item. So you have to be aware. That's number 2. There are actually neuroscientific deficits in people in terms of awareness of internal emotional states when it comes to addictions. Third thing is, but I'm still worried that in my downtime, I will feel scared and lonely. The way we lose control of our lives is by trying to protect ourselves or avoid negative emotion. The quickest way to lose control of your life is to try to craft a life with no negative emotion. So when I start to live my life in a way to avoid anxiety, avoid fear, and avoid sadness, what does that result in? What does my life become? How do I stop feeling anxious? Don't go to the party. Easy. How do I stop? How do I avoid sadness? How can I never be sad? Well, you can't ever be sad if if getting dumped makes you sad. The only way to never be sad is to never enter a relationship. So this is something that we need to understand as a society. What's happening in our society is we are valuing positive emotion over negative emotion. And what we try to do is cultivate positive emotion, positive emotion, positive emotion, and try to get the hell away from negative emotion, negative emotion, negative emotion. First thing that does that is a drug of abuse. We're going to take that frown, we're going to flip it upside down. Let's get us some artificial euphoria. But then what really starts to happen is when we are no longer able to experience, accept, or even embrace negative emotions, it cuts off slices of our life. Things become no longer possible. Because this person is doing actually pretty well. Huge respect for them, by the way. They're still going to Japan, and they recognize they're opening themselves up to that experience. Whereas if this negative emotion was stronger, they were giving into it more, they wouldn't even go to Japan in the first place. Because there are people out there, I'm sure, who are listening to this right now that have things that they want to do, but they don't do them because they're afraid of what could happen. I want to go to Japan, but I'll be lonely for a year. What if I don't meet anyone? So I'm not going to go. So if your life is moving in the wrong direction, there's a really good chance that it's through the avoidance of negative emotion. And building a life that you want to involves accepting and embracing that experience. I'm going to tell you all a story. So the first night I was on call, I'd finished medical school. I was a newly minted medical doctor. I started on something called night float. So there are doctors that work at the hospital during the day. And when the doctors are done working, because they're not usually there 24 hours, right? They have to go home. And the second team of doctors comes in and takes care of the patients overnight. So usually most of the people are sleeping and all the medications and stuff all being changed. So night float, during the day, you may cover 12 or 15 patients. At night, you'll cover 60 because most of them are kind of what we call tucked away. Some things they're okay, this person had, an asthma attack at 7 p.m. So make sure you check their, O2, their oxygen level at midnight. So there's some stuff that you have to do, but generally speaking, most people are doing okay. So I got a page. Page said rapid response, room whatever. Rapid response is something that's right below what a code is. So code, for those of you, when you see a medical show and they've got the paddles and they're like, clear, that's a code. That's when someone's actively dying. Before that, there's this thing called a rapid response, which is when someone's in distress, but it's not like an all hands on deck situation. So rapid response got called in a particular room. I go into the room. Someone is having a seizure. This is my first day, mind you, as a medical doctor, working in a hospital where I am responsible for this person. So I get the page because the nurse is like, page the doctor. This patient is having a seizure. I run into the room. I remember it was 2 or 3 doors down from where I was, so it was very easy. I was there within 15 seconds. A few seconds later, so I asked the nurse, I'm like, okay, who's this patient? What's going on with them? They started seizing about, 15, 30 seconds ago. I'm like, okay, cool. Seizure started then. Okay, what's going on? What's their medical history? So about 30 seconds later, my senior resident comes in, the second-year resident. This person has been a doctor for 366 days, and I've been a doctor for 1 day. He comes in, he stands, so the patient is seizing. I'm on one side, he's on the other side of the bed. He stands there with his arms crossed. And so immediately, like, what do? I was like, okay, like, thank God he's here. And I start telling him, this is the patient. He started seizing at this point. Patient started seizing and they're on this medications. There's like this. And then he's like, he looks at me, nods, and he's like, okay. And I'm like, Dan, what are we going to do? Patient is seizing. What are we going to do? And he's like, yeah, looks like the patient's seizing. What should you do? He's like, I don't know. Give him Ativan? He's like, okay, how do you want to give him Ativan? I don't know, IV. The patient's seizing. You can't take a medication by mouth. He's like, okay, so IV Ativan. How much do you want to give? I'm like, I don't know, like 1 milligram, 2 milligrams? He's like, sounds good to me. And I was like, okay, 2 milligram IV Ativan push now. It's like, sounds good. Patient gets the Ativan, seizure stops. I'm terrified. I'm like, wait, what's going on? So at that moment in time, I've got a choice. Do I want to come back tomorrow? Because this is what I'm in for. Dan, brilliant doctor, amazing teacher, made me part of the person that I am today. Let me swim in those terrifying waters. First day. He knew what he was doing, right? So he's not going to let me make a mistake. But like the instinct as a medical student is like, oh, the doctor's here. Right? Like, let him, like, oh, thank God the senior is here. Like, off my plate. I don't have to deal with it. Dan's like, Dan is seriously brilliant doctor. Fantastic person. And so you've got a choice in life of like what you do the next day. Because I can never be in that situation again. I can do it. Right? I can be, hey, you know what? This ain't for me. Should have become a monk. Screw this whole medical thing. I'm going to go sit in a cave in the Himalayas and like, that's what I'm going to do. I don't ever have to be in this situation again if I don't want to. The question is, are you going to let your negative emotions shape your life? Because there are situations that you can put yourself in which you will feel fear, anxiety, loneliness, and you can put yourself not in those situations. And the moment that we start letting our negative emotions control what we do, and that's where when you're experiencing the negative emotion in the moment, sometimes you can't control it, which is okay. The moment we let the anticipation of the negative emotion restrict what we put ourselves in, that's when you lose control of your life. So we started this talk about what about a technology usage is okay. Right? So may not even be an addiction, which is totally fine. Because actually the majority of people who struggle with technology right now, I don't know if they're clinically addicted or not. Like it doesn't seem like it, right? Everyone's struggling with this. So how do you manage this? The first is to understand cravings and behavioral reinforcement. And that resisting the impulse for a time and then giving in actually reinforces the strength of the craving. Just like if a kid throws a temper tantrum and then I give them the iPad, what the kid is going to learn over time is I need to throw a temper tantrum to get what I want. And paradoxically, I give them the iPad to stop the temper tantrum. And what I do is sign myself up for a temper tantrum the next day. So my ability to try to control the craving actually exacerbates the craving. Very important principle from addiction. Absolutely applicable here. So decide ahead of time, like, do I get my crutch today or do I have to walk by myself? Is it a training wheels day or is it walking by myself? When I go into the ocean, am I going to have floaties or am I going to go into the ocean and need to swim on my own? Right? Because having floaties in the ocean doesn't teach you how to swim. It does the opposite. Now, see, there's a graduated level, right? You don't want to jump straight into the ocean without a floaty if you don't know how to swim. But it's an analogy. So be careful what you're reinforcing in terms of cravings and giving into those feelings. Second thing is awareness. Right? So we know that people who struggle with addictions, and this may be by virtue of the fact that oftentimes social media, technology, and things like that suppress our emotional circuits, which is how they numb us out. But then what happens is we have these needs and feelings and stuff like that, and we give into those, but we don't really understand what they are or where they come from. But if we really want to get rid of the behavior, we have to address the underlying stuff. We have to address the root of the problem, which is I feel like I need to be on my phone right now. Okay, well, wait, what is that? Is that like hunger or thirst? You need to eat. You need to drink water. You may need to use the restroom. You may need to sleep. There's not a need. There's not a physiologic need to browse Twitter. It's not a need. There may be some kind of emotional drive, right? We could even call it a need. You can use that term. So understand what that is. Like, what are we satisfying here? What are we getting away from? What are we doing? And especially for some of this, like, podcasts, the podcast junkie, it may not be something as simple as, okay, I'm using this technology to suppress my numbness. It may be actually deeper than that. That right now I'm not as successful as I want to be. And every time I listen to a podcast, there's a part of my mind that believes that I'm moving in the right direction. And it's really important for me at this point in my life to feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Still, whether you listen to the podcast or not is actually separate from in this point. This point is about, wow, it's like that's a really important thing to understand about yourself. Because then the conversation then becomes, okay, if I really need to be moving forward in life, what can I seriously do? Because the other thing that happens is when we satisfy that need with a podcast, we don't satisfy it in other ways. And then we stay stuck at home listening to podcasts all day without actually changing our lives. What am I actually going to do to fix that need? Because podcasts ain't cutting it. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can discover once you look within. The last thing to consider is, in general, what is the relationship between you and negative emotion? Is it something to be avoided at all costs? Do you try to avoid it? You want to conquer it? You want to make it go away? Because the truth of the matter, like, I hate to break this to y'all, but there's literally a part of your brain called the amygdala. And the primary function of the amygdala is to experience negative emotion. It's the survival center of our brain, too. The primary function is to survive, help you survive. But the way that it does that, it makes negative emotions in your head. Like, our brain has dedicated machinery that makes you feel anxious and scared. Why? It's because it's a part of life. It's actually advantageous. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. So once you stop avoiding situations that had negative emotion, you'll start to really be in control of your life. Why do you procrastinate? So I was reading something that's kind of tragic about looking at a crypto forum of people who haven't told their spouses that they've lost all of their savings in crypto. Why do you think they don't tell them? What are they afraid of? Right? And what is that doing to their marriage? One thing to lose all the money, it's another thing to not tell me. So if you really want to be in control of your life, stop avoiding the negative emotion. Go to Japan. There's a chance you could be lonely. It's not the end of the world. Because negative emotion, too, is temporary. Beautiful thing. This is a revelation that oftentimes we miss because we're so busy avoiding it that we never get to become familiar with it. Think about negative emotions. It goes away, too. Our amygdala is wired to turn off after a while. So if you're struggling with technology addiction, I know it's kind of not even addiction. If you're trying to figure out, okay, is this okay to use, not use? I realize this conversation became a little bit bigger than that. But I think that the better you are, if you're not really struggling with an addiction, the deeper you have to go in order to really understand yourself and move forward. That's what the path is, right? So if you have a clinical diagnosis or if you're in the ICU, it's pretty simple what needs to be done. But the healthier you get, the more nuanced you have to become, the more thoughtful you have to become, the more you have to understand yourself. And like it gets, in a sense, not harder necessarily, but like the work becomes deeper. So if someone has like a severe depression, it's pretty simple. Like we need some kind of medication, right? And there's other stuff. But that other stuff becomes more and more important the further you go. And so for those of y'all that are in our community and doing okay, you've still got a lot of work ahead of you. I don't mean that to... Thing is, the work is fun. It's fantastic. It's so rewarding. But there's a lot. So RZB125 is asking, what about being addicted to people online? I have a friend who depends on a few micro celebrities and dedicates all his free time to them. How can I help him? So this is a story that we're hearing more and more, unfortunately, that we have friends and sometimes even romantic partners that are very, very obsessive. Hopefully I can use that word without it being inappropriate, but obsessive, I'm almost using it in the clinical sense where like obsessive compulsive disorder is like persistent thoughts that won't go away. So that's kind of what I mean by that. Anyway, very, very preoccupied with particular people. They're almost addicted to, as you put it, a micro celebrity. So what can you do? So that's where the first thing to understand is that like you can't cure someone of an addiction without their help. So very practically, what I would do is start with open-ended, non-judgmental questions. So if y'all caught the pre-contemplative talk earlier today, that's a good example. So you start with like challenging assumptions and asking questions. What do you think about how much, tell me about these people. Like, what do you think about them? What do you think about the amount of time that you spend with them? You can also ask them lots of questions that have nothing to do with them. So how are you doing nowadays? How do you feel on a day-to-day basis? Eventually you can work your way up to like, what's the direction of your life? And if they're unhappy with the direction of your life, the next question is, what do you think why is your life moving in the wrong direction? I mean, you don't want to ask it like that. That's going to be judgmental. But what's getting in the way of you building the life that you want? How can I help you build the life that you want? Those are the kinds of questions to ask. Now, the tricky thing here is that in the back of your mind, you may be thinking, no, this is one problem. It's the micro celebrities. Whereas once again, I think this is the kind of thing where you can look at the behavior, but generally speaking, you can look at all addictions and they share one thing in common, which is that they offer some kind of emotional relief. And that's where if you really want to conquer an addiction, you have to deal with the underlying root of the problem. You can that's a piece of it. So what does this person get when they spend time with these micro celebrities, as you put them? What do they get? How do they feel about themselves? What is that thing in them that's hungry for this kind of interaction? And until you understand that and start to replace it in other ways, like they're going to stay stuck. So you can't just get sober. You have to have alternative coping mechanisms or go to do something like therapy where you deal with the underlying work that causes you to reach for some kind of substance. Good question, but very challenging. Weird question, but when things like meditation also reduce anxiety, why don't we get addicted to them? Really good question. Streamer loves me. So it's because reductions of anxiety happen in two ways. They can happen temporarily, and they can happen. So you can deal with the symptom, or you can deal with the cause. So one is that when we look at most addictive substances, they don't deal with the cause. They don't deal with the roots of anxiety. What they do is symptomatic relief of anxiety. So for example, if you prescribe someone a benzodiazepine class of medication, like Xanax is a very good example, that's not going to cure anyone of an anxiety disorder. It'll help them manage the anxiety in the moment, but it's not doing anything long-term. So substances or other kinds of things that deal with short-term problems will actually reinforce that behavior, right? So if I make something numb, but I don't actually fix it, what I'm going to do is need to engage in the behavior over and over and over and over again, because the problem's never fixed. The second the numbness wears off, the anxiety comes right back, and I need to reach for the substance again. We explain this concept in a lot of detail in Rebound Anxiety in the anxiety module, by the way. There's a whole video about it. So how is meditation different? So meditation is different in a couple of different ways. Actually, before we go to meditation, let's look at psychotherapy. So the purpose of treating psychotherapy, so psychotherapy, 1 hour a week of psychotherapy doesn't fix someone's anxiety tomorrow when they're feeling anxious. So that's why, like Xanax, if you pop a Xanax, you're going to feel a anxiety relief almost immediately. Whereas psychotherapy, we don't start to see a clinical change for weeks. So it's a completely different mechanism of action of reduction of anxiety. So what you're dealing with is the root of the anxiety. It's an oversimplification. You can deal with more than that. And so that's why we start to see, Xanax will work in minutes, whereas therapy will take weeks. And then what happens is people don't get addicted to therapy. I mean, they can. So if therapy starts to become a way where they offload their emotions and they don't do any of the deeper work, they'll be sort of kind of stuck in therapy. And you'll see that as well. Patients who come in and they basically emotionally offload, but then don't change anything about their lives to prevent that emotion from building up again. Right? So I can come into a therapist appointment and I can offload some frustration about my partner who doesn't listen to me. But unless I have a conversation with that partner and change my relationship, I'm going to be coming in every single week and offloading the crap from my interpersonal problems, which can be a good use of therapy, by the way. Sometimes that's just what people need. But then people don't get addicted to therapy. Why not? Because once you fix the problem, you no longer need to go. The root is taken care of. You're no longer feeling nearly as anxious on a day-to-day basis, and you stop coming. So how does meditation work? Generally speaking, meditation does both. Right? So meditation is going to, in the short term, depending on the kind of technique that you do, will balance your physiology, and you can use it as a coping mechanism, even become quote unquote dependent on it, which is what a coping mechanism is. So people do, in a sense, get addicted to meditation. The thing is, there are also other principles that involved with addiction, like, the euphoria and dopamine and stuff like that. Meditation doesn't really cause that kind of stuff. So it's not independently reinforcing that way. Because remember, drugs of abuse don't just numb you. They also artificially make you feel usually euphoric. So meditation can manage that sort of as a coping mechanism, and as people meditate and they start to have realizations and things like that, they will start to discover the root of their anxiety. And then as they do that, they'll sort of the anxiety will get better, hopefully even in sustained remission or permanently. Great question. Ultimately has to do with reduction in anxiety has multiple mechanisms. Okay. So speaking of meditation, let's do some meditation today. Actually, so this is a great question. So could you give more examples? So don't eat the juice is asking, could you give more examples of open-ended and non-judgmental questions or how to construct them? Not in this moment, but this is actually something that a lot of people in our community have asked for. So not only are we going to give it to you, we're going to give it to you in a dedicated way. There's actually a social sandbox event running on our Discord this month. So if you're terrified of socializing and need a place to practice and learn how to like practice talking, get practical tips and chances to role play and practice social interactions, we actually have a social sandbox event that's led by an HG coach. So HG coaches are very, very competent at asking these kinds of questions. And they can even take your specific scenario and give you specific examples about how to ask non-judgmental questions. Okay, so a little bit that'll, here's something that we teach our coaches. So don't ask why, ask what. So instead of asking, why can't you wake up on time, ask, what makes it harder for you to wake, what makes it hard for you to wake up on time? What's the difference between those two questions? Why can't you wake up on time? What makes it hard for you to wake up on time? Can you all tell? What's the difference? Right? So there are practical tips. So there's one. So I gave you a little bit of an answer. But if you really want to learn how to ask questions and speak to people, check out our Social Sandbox event. It's on our Discord. This is also, by the way, one of the most popular events we've ever had. And we're running into a problem because we can only fit, there's so many people who want in that the lobby sizes are too small. So we're trying to work on that, I think. But it's apparently going really, really well. And people basically, like, just like your question, people are like, okay, practically, how do I learn this skill? So it's on our Discord, completely free. Show up, practice your skills, learn some of this stuff, because we recognize that. So I can teach y'all about stuff, right? I can introduce concepts, but then at some point, y'all have to start applying it. You have to actually practice. And that's what the Discord is really there for. It's a place for the community to support each other, to get help, and sometimes to do these really practical things. Like there was we had a month of meditation in May where a lot of people who wanted to develop a meditation practice hopped on, developed a meditation practice, got together. These things like accountability. I cannot hold y'all accountable over Twitch. I cannot hold you accountable over YouTube. But accountability is absolutely an important piece. And that kind of stuff happens on Discord. Next thing that we're doing is a touching grass experience. So this is essentially it's kind of an ongoing experience that will start in July, where there are different tasks for y'all to complete. We're going to gamify it. You're going to gain points for doing things. And then winner is going to get some kind of reward. We're trying to sort out what that's going to be. But this is a good opportunity for y'all to go out and practice all these kinds of things that you should be doing, like literally touching grass, right? Getting out of these four walls, because we can talk about you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. How are you going to get that behavioral anchor, that behavioral nudge or push to actually do it? Where are you actually going to learn how to ask open-ended questions? Where are you actually going to learn practicing, or where are you going to practice being non-judgmental in a conversation? Got to happen on the Discord. Last thing that I wanted to share with y'all. We're not going to go over to this post in a whole lot of detail, but I thought it was pretty cool. Dr. K's video, The Truth About Incels, confirmed my hunch about the benefits of playing Disco Elysium. So for those of y'all that don't know, we've been playing Disco Elysium a little bit on stream, and apparently this person played a lot of Disco Elysium. And what they sort of said is, during my playthrough, I noticed how much I was learning about myself and my own social instincts when confronted with dialogue trees. Thanks to Kim's reassurances and consistent support, I started to make choices I wouldn't have normally chosen for myself. And I felt my actual ego digesting the results and comparing ways I can improve my real social experiences. So first of all, this is really, really fascinating that someone is sort of learning from Disco Elysium. Second thing is that a lot of times we think that the best way to learn something is to be involved ourselves. But if we really think about what healthy gamer is, through watching an interview, you see parts of yourself in another person. When you play a video game, you see parts of yourself in that video game. And it almost becomes a sandbox where you can look at yourself in a slightly different way. The problem is, if we want to work on talking to people and we go to a party and we're socially anxious, that anxiety is going to make it impossible for us to learn and reflect and understand ourselves. So this principle is what's baked into group coaching. So I wanted to share that post because this is essentially how we've designed group coaching, which is to recognize that when you watch two people interact in group, so when someone has a problem that you have, let's say procrastination, or you're a gifted kid, and as other people treat that person non-judgmentally, you'll start to realize things that you wouldn't realize as long as you're the gifted kid. So this is something that I think we undervalue in society. So we talk about the benefit of experience, personal experience, a ton. And that the whole reason we're a thing is because you can actually learn from watching someone else. And sometimes you can even learn more profoundly because you see it so clearly in someone else. The problem is you don't see it so clearly in yourself. That fundamental, the subjective nature of dealing with our own problems handicaps us in understanding them. So the interesting thing is that when someone is struggling with procrastination, you can help them easier than you can help yourself. And when you help that other person with procrastination, you are programming your brain with the script of what to do yourself. It's hard to go all the way to the top of the mountain and conquer procrastination within yourself all at once. But you can actually help someone else. And as you help someone, you learn that stuff on your own. This is a concept that's been well explored. It's sort of this idea of the wounded healer, right? That my ability to help someone else, through helping someone else, I myself learn so much about me. So I've learned so much about myself through doing, being a psychiatrist for other people. And so what we try to do in that group coaching experience, and I think this is something that like people haven't quite understood because we haven't really been able to explain this because it's so hard to explain, is that sometimes actually helping someone else can help you more or easier than getting direct help yourself, which is kind of weird. So that's just something that we wanted to share. I think it's really interesting. I'm curious whether this can be consistently achieved through something like a video game. We sort of have data on group, right? So we know that there's consistently like you're going to get something out of it. But really curious in terms of Disco Elysium and whether like this can actually be studied in some way. When trying. This is great. So Silly Book is asking, what should you do when trying to help those other people brings on feelings of imposter syndrome? I'll tell you what you do. If you're in group coaching, the answer is actually very simple. If feeling like other people makes you feel like an imposter, what you do is you tell the group. You're like, hey, I kind of feel like an imposter when I help y'all. I feel like all the advice that I'm giving is useless. You just tell the group that. And then one of two things is going to happen. Probably both of them will happen. Other people will be like, holy crap, I feel that way too. I feel like an imposter. I feel like you're actually really good at helping people. I feel like I'm not nearly as good at helping people as you are. Lol, what? I thought that you were the best at helping people. And then y'all are all going to be confused about it. And we're like, wait, hold on a second. No, I thought you were really good. I'm the imposter. And then other people are like, no, I'm the imposter. And at some point, it's like, wait a second. We're all the imposter? What does that mean? Hold on. How does that work? That's when you really learn how to overcome imposter syndrome. Second thing, someone says, wait a minute, you're an imposter, but what you said actually really helped me. It was really helpful. Like having you in the group has helped me a ton. I've learned so much from you. I'm so confused by that. How do we reconcile your feeling of being an imposter with the fact that I'm actually getting help from this group? Because that involves reconciling those two things. And that's when you're going to say, oh, you're just saying that to make me feel better because I can't, there's no way I can help you. And the other group members are going to be like, wait, but you are actually helping me. Like, I don't know how to explain to you that you've actually made an impact in my life. What I'm hearing from you is that I am telling you that you've made an impact, but you have difficulty accepting that. What makes it hard for you to accept that you can have a positive impact on other people's life? Someone's going to ask you that question, and then you're fucked. Because then you really have to look at where this imposter syndrome comes from and what makes it hard for you to accept that you can have a positive impact on other people. The problem is that if you're working with a personal coach in this kind of situation, they can never say that. Because it's not your job to help the coach. Y'all get that? So there's some benefits that you can get through a group, and this is where there's tons of research about the value of peer support services. But if someone's like, I mean, we talked about this, I want to say like on Friday even, where it's like, if you're talking to Dr. K and Dr. K is like, oh, you have value. It's like, you're just saying that because you're Dr. K. I don't actually have value. You're saying that because that's just what you do. You're so stupidly optimistic that you see the value in other people. You're a dumbass. It's different when it comes from your peers. This is the huge revolution that recent research has shown. This is why the United Nations, World Health Organization, U.S. Office of the Surgeon General are calling for more peer support services. That's because we've recognized that a psychiatrist does particular things. And do we need more psychiatrists? 100%. But there's value towards your mental health that cannot be provided by psychiatry. And that's where peer support mental health services come in. If you want to get sober and you come to me, I will say, okay, awesome. I'm an addiction psychiatrist. I'm going to try to help you with a treatment plan. By the way, have you ever heard of Alcoholics Anonymous or Refuge Recovery? What do you think about doing that too? Because there are some things that those peer support services offer that I can't provide as a psychiatrist. And there are some things that those peer support services can't provide that I can do as a mental health professional. Some solo player saying, coach is an imposter, so the group coaches the coach. So let me explain something to y'all. Imagine that you're a coach for Healthy Gamer, and then you run a group. Do you think you're going to feel like an imposter? 100%. Anytime a coach starts running a group, they feel like an imposter. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And so what they do is they come to case review with Dr. K, and we talk about their feelings of being imposters. And then there's a bunch of coaches in the room, and we all talk about being imposters. And then they're like, oh, this is how I stop feeling like an imposter. And then something magical happens. Now you've got a coach who knows how to deal with their own imposter syndrome. So then they can start to nudge you in the right direction. Right? So the coach knows, it's like, yeah, I feel like an imposter in this moment. The difference is they don't let it control them. They're able to acknowledge the feeling without letting it dominate them, hopefully. Do y'all get this? And that's what's so confusing for people is people come into group and they're like, I thought the coach was going to tell me how to fix my life. There are thousands of people that have told you how to fix your life. Has it worked? Everyone is looking for answers. You know what you should do. The problem is you can't bring yourself to do it. What's getting in the way? It's not about where you should go. It's about what gets in the way. And that requires introspection. And so it's kind of like, even if people ask me, like, what do you get? Like, what am I going to learn about myself? That's the whole point. It's I don't know what you need to learn about yourself. That is something we can only figure out once you show up and we start talking. So do you listen to podcasts all the time because you feel like you're not as far as you should be in life? And every time you listen to a podcast, you feel like you're being productive. And then what happens is as we talked about earlier, since the podcast makes you feel productive, it actually keeps you from being productive. Because negative emotion sometimes drives us towards particular behavior. But when we satisfy that negative emotion with a shadow of a thing, we lose that motivation from the negative emotion. So since I feel productive watching or listening to a podcast, I don't actually do productive crap. Because my brain knows, oh, we need to be more productive. I know I can just queue up 4 podcasts. That'll fix the problem. It'll fix that emotional need of being productive so I'm not so far behind anymore. But you've got to work at this through introspection. And how do y'all think I know this stuff? For those, someone's like, Timothy Wu is saying hitting too close to home. Like, how do you think we know this stuff? It's because we've got a program now that's had thousands of clients, and we've asked them, what have you learned? We've asked our coaches, what have you learned? What issues do your clients struggle with? And we've figured out what are the common things. And so the more that we share this information, the more that we collect this information from an AOE perspective, the more we start to see like what the road forward is. Absolutely data collection. So this is something that I want y'all to understand. We get the outcomes that we get. So we recently presented our initial outcomes at the American Psychiatric Association National Conference for our coaching program. We get the outcomes that we get because we do something. We're able to do something now that the field of therapy really needs to start doing, which is pooling data. We can learn so much once we start looking like, so I've worked with a few thousand patients, I suppose. Intensely, I've worked with a few hundred patients, gotten to know a few hundred people. But through the shared learnings of like, you know, what we sort of get in terms of feedback and all that kind of stuff, like we can learn so much more about like what happens and like what people are struggling with and what helps them. And then we try to share that information amongst each other, and then we sort of, you know, guide people in the right direction. And the key thing here is that it's not just like some kind of magical information. I could write it up. We sort of do that, right? That's why we have Dr. K's guide. For those of y'all that want the information laid out, exhaustively researched, exhaustively organized, delivered very beautifully, and yet we didn't present the outcomes for Dr. K's guide at the American Psychiatric Association. We presented the outcomes from our coaching program. You can read a book about mental health. Will it help? Absolutely. But going to therapy and reading a book about mental health are 2 different things. And this is where what we sort of discovered at Healthy Gamer is that there's like a range of what people need. Some people just need information. That's fantastic. That's why we're on Twitch. That's why we're on YouTube. That's why we have TikTok now. Some people want a stream. Some people want a 2-minute TikTok. Wherever you are, we're going to try to give you whatever we can to help. Some people are like, okay, cool. Dr. K talked about this post, like that person asked, can you please give me more examples of open-ended questions? And we realized, you know what? I can stream as much as I want to, but people need an opportunity to actually practice saying this stuff. Enter the Discord community. Huge shout out to our mods and Tech Teller for putting together this event that literally has full lobbies that we're running into that problem, where people are coming in and practicing how to ask open-ended questions, non-judgmentalness, all this other crap. Run by a coach who knows these skills. Fantastic. Some of y'all are like, okay, but I need more intensive help. I really want to understand like where my motivation comes from. I really want to understand what's holding me back. I really need some kind of like goal setting kind of stuff. Okay, fine, then coaching's for you. And that's the tricky thing is like what kind of coaching is right for you is like, it sort of depends. The funny thing is that a lot of people who think that group coaching is not right for them are actually the ones for whom it's most helpful, which is the big irony. Because they're like, oh, like, I'm socially anxious. And it's like, where are you going to conquer that? In a room with one person or in a room with 7 people who you never have to see after this 90 minutes? That's the challenge. And so we're going to do what we can to help y'all. You know, we're going to do our best, even including today, which is how you change without lifting a damn finger or doing anything. If that's what y'all need, we're going to do our best to try to provide, you know, scientifically validated or at least at the minimum spiritually inspired, you know, answers for that kind of stuff. And the big irony there is that most of change happens without doing anything. All right. Oh my God. I have a thing. So, we are past time for meditation. Crap. I'm like super late. So let me do this. Crap. I started ranting, chat. Sorry. Wait, hold on. Who are we rating? No, wait, not Dream League. Who are we rating? Okay. Go here. Go here. Double lift? Sure. Justine Griffin? Sure. Oh, music. Sounds good. Let's go. Looks like Justine is doing something with a keyboard. So check it out. Take care, everybody. Dream League. Yeah, there's a lot of hype Dota going on. It's good. Yeah, I'm sorry about meditation. I'm still a little bit sick, but that's really not, I don't think I'm so sick that I can't teach. That's just, it's my mistake in terms of time management. I'll do better, chat. Dota stream? Okay, we'll stream Dota at some point. But, all right, take care, everybody.